Hello, hello. Welcome. Here we are. Um last week let me grab that. There we go. Last week I was on vacation, which is a bit of an overstatement considering if you have kids, vacation is work. But um we are back and to discuss the very surprising topic. A lot of people are like, what the hell is Preston talking about with regards to how Israel and Palestine created the Hound and Skahaz Mo Kondak. And this isn't any trick, and this isn't any like comparing of themes or anything like that. This is like George R. R. Martin's writing, and where these characters like come from. So in 1988, George R. R. Martin published a wild cards novel called Aces Abroad. And the year is a very important thing here because keep in mind, the world has changed a lot since 1988. I mean, he's probably writing this in 1987. But when you think about the Sneetch conflict between the Starbelly Sneetches and the Plainbelly Sneetches, um, it's it was a very different time. I mean, 1987, 1988, like just in 1983, Anwar Sadat had been assassinated by Islamic Jihad for like making peace with Israel, and this is years before the assassination of Rabin in 1995, which essentially the assassination of Rabin essentially like ends the ends any hope for like a Palestinian state. All of these things that have happened that are now so far in the past. Before like the days of electing Netanyahu and the and advancement of acceleration of um, settlements and things like this. But nonetheless, it is 1988, and George R. R. Martin puts out wild cards for Aces Abroad. Now, the keep in mind, wild cards. The story it's kind of X-Men, but the background of it is an alternate America where back in the 40s, um, the a wild cards virus descended upon America, descended upon the world, and which most people with the virus died, and then those that survived, most became hideously deformed, and they call these jokers. And then the rare few um, of them became what they call aces, which are essentially just superheroes. They've got whatever powers. And so you've got this world filled with jokers, a few superhero aces, and the rest of the world. And it's now this superhero world, but it's also a completely alternate history. And so in Aces Abroad, there is a world tour where the hero aces are brought around to different countries, and going with them is a Joker, a deformed guy. He has like a big elephant snout named Xavier Desmond. Um, and what's fascinating about there's a story it's cut up in little pieces and put in between the other stories that are written by other authors, but the stories in between are all written by George R. R. Martin, and collectively they're called From the Journal of Xavier Desmond. And Xavier Desmond is it's fascinating because it's kind of the closest you're going to get to George R. R. Martin just sort of honestly writing about his own politics. Granted, it's through the mouth of Xavier Desmond, but he says things that, if someone he says things that are enlightened enough that if someone like no one would write something so enlightened if you were not as enlightened. And so it's interesting. It's at least George R. R. Martin's political opinions in the year 1987, 1988. And so it's a fascinating little thing. And I always there is a quote near the beginning when the group goes to Guatemala, and I use this a lot when I talk about Ice and Fire, in which Xavier Desmond says, "Why must we draw these lines, these fine distinctions, these labels and barriers that set us apart? Ace and Nat and Joker, capitalist and communist, Catholic and Protestant, Arab and Jew, Indian and Latino, and on everywhere. And of course, true humanity is to be found on our side of the line, and we feel free to oppress and rape and kill the other, whoever they might be." So right there, you can kind of see George R. Martin's political opinions, at least in the year 1987, 1988, that he believes that nation state, ethnicity, religion are all kind of imagined concepts, and that we create others and we artificially kind of, you know, otherize and make people the enemies, and that, like, you know, really if we were enlightened, we'd drop all of these pretenses and see people as people. Now, in Aces Abroad, the later Xavier Desmond does go to Jerusalem. And it's a different history, and it's a history in which Palestine won the war of Israeli independence. Israel is created as a nation state, but Palestine controls and has autonomy over a lot of land as well. So there's two nation states. It's essentially a two-state solution, kind of, where Jerusalem itself is administered by the UN, which is funny because that's kind of what was on the bargaining table during like Camp David Accords in the 90s. But George R. Martin like has that happen to Israel Palestine when writing in 87, 88, you know. So he then even though that's the setup, he barely talks about Israel Palestine. He barely talks about the Star Belly Sneetches and the Plain Belly Sneetches. Instead, he's created a new stand-in where these jokers, these mutant people that were created by the wildcards virus, they exist everywhere, and so they have a ghetto in Jerusalem, and so there's a Joker quarter. If you've ever been to Jerusalem, you know that in the old city there are four quarters. There's a Jewish quarter, a Muslim quarter, a Christian quarter, and an Armenian quarter. And so in this world, there's now a Joker quarter. Okay, and there's terrorist attacks all over the place, back and forth between Palestinians and Israelis, but there's also terrorist attacks between Jokers and non-Jokers. And so the Jokers are now a stand-in for another party, equal and equivalent to the Star Belly Sneetches and the Plain Belly Sneetches. So Xavier Desmond ends up meeting the head of this terrorist organization that exists in the quarter, called the Black Dog, or the Hound. He walks around with a dog mask, and he's called the Hound. Okay. Now, other than that, the endings with the parallels to Sandor Clegane kind of end. Sandor Clegane is also physically based on a character called Breton Braith from Dying of the Light, who has half of his face burned and is mutilated. But then the character of the Hound is kind of taken from this journal of Xavier Desmond. So the Hound is the leader of this terrorist organization called the Twisted Fists. But he doesn't have the personality of Sandor Clegane in any sense. The only thing about that's kind of similar is that he's called the Hound, and he walks around in a big metal dog mask, and then he switches the dog mask off so that other people can be the Hound if he wants them to be, which of course happens to the Hound. In a more similar sense, he's much more like Skahaz. And if you read the story, he's essentially the Skahaz character, and he says a lot of things that are that are almost straight out of Skahaz's mouth. So for instance, he leads an organization called the Twisted Fists, which, even though they're the terrorist organization, you can kind of like start thinking about the Sons of the Harpy, Brazen Beast like situation, and the conflict in Marine. And of course, the conflict in Marine is about this escalation, right? This escalation between these two groups, the terrorist organization of the Sons of the Harpy and the oppressive group that, yes, they're in power, but they're no better um, than the Sons of the Harpy, which is the brazen beasts, which you can start seeing the parallels to the Sneetches, you know? And um, the Hound in this story actually has a policy of any death of ours means 5 deaths of theirs, you know? And it's like whether they're related to the people that actually killed their man or not. So you instantly see this. You're like 5 for 1 escalation, like as like ridiculous like idea. Like that's just stupid. Like of course that's not going to work. Now what's funny when you actually go to and of course like we're dealing with masks and the changing of masks, and like Skahaz himself walks around in masks but then can switch his mask with the Brazen Beast masks as well. So it's very obvious once you read, and I do recommend that people read the Journal of Xavier Desmond. It's easy to find online. It's on YouTube. It's everywhere. But what I find hilarious about the Journal of Xavier Desmond and kind of the birth of Skahaz as a character. I mean, it's like I say, the Hound appears, but it's not the Hound is not really other than the fact that it's a metal helmet and he's called the Hound. But the character of Skahaz is very clearly this guy. And what's funny about the Hound in the story with the 5 to 1 escalation and how you're supposed to be like, well, that's ridiculous. That's never going to work. That's a bad idea. Is that Skahaz, who is this, he actually only has a 1 for 1 policy in A Dance with Dragons. If you remember, his whole policy with Dany is like, for every brazen beast that dies, we kill a hostage. And in that situation, even on a 1-to-1, you're supposed to recognize that Skahaz is an idiot. Of course that's not going to work. Of course that's going to escalate, right? So like George R. R. Martin actually even like lowered the number from 5 to 1 to 1-to-1. And even when sitting on a 1-to-1 situation, we're supposed to look at Skahaz and be like, man, what an idiot. Like, what an idiot, right? Like, oh my God, what a bad idea. And so you have this like exact situation where we're talking about today with the Starbelly Sneetches and the Plainbelly Sneetches, where every time we see these actions, whether by the Plainbelly Sneetches or the Starbelly Sneetches, anyone from the outside instantly goes, oh my God, that's a bad idea. Oh my God, that's not going to work. In the same sense that like you look at Skahaz and being like, oh my God, like your policy on dealing with like the Sons of the Harpy is not going to work. Like, do not do that. Do not do that. But so but did I miss talk of the news? No, we are talking A Song of Ice and Fire. But this is essentially where what I'm talking about when I say that the conflict created these characters, because they did. And so when looking at the Marine chapters in the future, like remember that Skahaz is a creation of the creation of the Black Dog from the Hound, a stand-in for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and it's a George R. R. Martin comment about escalation and how to deal with I don't know, like how to deal with insurrections, terrorism, occupation, colonialism. How, you know, it's a statement on all of these things. I mean, George R. Martin tries to make these universal. I mean, when people read A Dance with Dragons, they were all like, he's talking about Iraq, isn't he? And George R. Martin's, you know, like, oh, actually, he's, you know, he mostly talks about Vietnam, but in this situation, like Skahaz Mokandak is specifically from this wildcard story about Israel-Palestine. Now, before I started, I think there was a question asking me when I started reading A Song of Ice and Fire. I started reading fairly late. I read a Game of Thrones right before Game of Thrones came out, and then I finished the series shortly after the first season. But I was not like an old timer back in the day, um, reading A Song of Ice and Fire. Like, it was, I came on much later. And then I had a question about, and again, like when I start the stream, like it's hard for me to get to the super chats that happen before I start. But when I think I had a question about critical drinker again, saying that like my criticism of critical drinker doesn't necessarily apply because he's Scottish. Because, for instance, critical drinker makes a lot of criticisms of, say, feminism, and like is blind kind of issues like the overturning of Roe versus Wade in America. And this comment was like, how can you really criticize him because he's Scottish? And I would say my criticisms apply because he's largely commenting on American media. And so when you're talking about American media is dripping with the politics of America. And so to talk about them from a Scottish position and not care about those issues, for instance, to bash feminism and not understand like what feminism means in an American concept after viewing an American piece of art, that's kind of like, daft. But we also, we live in this global world where things bleed over. But the point is that like, you know, bashing feminism is stupid. you know, because like clearly, like women have a hard time, and when we're talking about feminism, we're really talking about reproductive freedom, and that's the main issue. And so when people are like, "Oh, these feminists," like you're essentially going, "I'm fine with abortion being banned." Like that's the equivalent. I mean, people wrap up and hide these words, but that's what it is. But man, these things I think about, like when people are like, some people like don't think that there's like some people are so blind, like they don't see that there's inequality between men and women. And it frustrates me because like it hits me every day. Like when I want to change my baby's diaper and I can't find a fucking like male bathroom with a changing station, it pisses me off. Like I'm like, oh my, like when these things affect me, and I always say like feminism benefits men. Like this is just one of those things. Like, oh my god, why can't you put the fucking changing station in both men's and women's rooms, bathrooms, so I can fucking change my baby, and not put him on the fucking dirty floor of a bathroom. Like, oh, you only put the changing station in the women's bathroom. Ah, oh, fuck. You know how often that happens? Oh my god. Oh my gosh. So, all right. Let's talk about what's next. Let's get through. I'm making sure I'm getting all of these. If time travel Bran fails, falling into the ice spikes, only has so many attempts in past and can't nail it and dies. So her story is humanity's last chance, and past the fall, no impact from Bran. Um, um, so one of the things, when thinking about the time loop, and I think about this a lot, is if Bran is in this time loop, essentially like he keeps trying stuff, he can't get out of the pit, he falls, while falling, he time travels, his dead body hits the ice, and but his body has gone back in time, he gets to try the loop again. If that is the case, like what happens when Bran finally gets out? And I'm kind of split on the idea, and I haven't really decided yet if once he gets out, there's no more loop, and this is Bran's last chance, or if he thinks he got out of the loop, but in fact, there's more loop. There's other opportunities for him to time travel to put him back into the loop. For example, like the floating pools in front of the Winterfell werewood. seem to offer just as much opportunity for uh, sensory deprivation as like falling in the pit, you know. And so so I would at least think that at least Bran would think it's the last chance, and so to at least like put some stakes out there, you know, because if there are no stakes, if he can just keep dying and resetting, so at least Bran has to believe that this is it, that this is his final chance. Um, have a best man speech soon. Any advice, any tips or advice? I do actually have I actually have I this comes up a lot, and I tell people this advice, and some people follow it and some people don't, but I think it's very, very important. If you're giving a best man speech, first and foremost, okay, no one cares about your relationship with the groom. No one gives a shit. The only relationship that anyone in that room cares about is the relationship between the groom and the bride. Okay, I've gone to so many weddings where the maid of honor or the best man speech is about how they're such good friends and how he's such a great guy and how they were friends in college and hey, I've got a funny story about blah blah blah. No one wants to hear it. I know that you think it might, like I'm saying you, I don't mean you specifically, but I mean I know the speech giver thinks that like this is a funny story and people are going to find it charming. No, they are there for one reason. They are there to observe the love between the bride and the groom. That's it. They want to know how these people met. They want examples of their love. Because, like, as observers, they're not getting very much background into that. A lot of times you go to a wedding and you're like, how did these people meet? I fucking know nothing about that guy. And so you are providing the only exposition and background to this ceremony that everybody is observing. Like, you know, I recently went to my cousin's wedding, and I don't know anything really about um, like who my cousin married, and like their speeches to each other, like you got to reveal a little bit about the love, but like the other speeches, you know, her father's speech about her, or my other cousin's speeches about my other cousin, like I didn't learn anything. Like all people want to know is about that love. That love. So when you do your speech, it has to be when I met them as a couple. When they met and I saw this aspect and I knew that they were in love before this and this and reason. And when they did this together, I knew that they would make a great match. Make it about the couple. Keep it about the couple. Do not talk about you and him. No one gives a fuck. No one. About them. Make it about them. And sometimes this is really hard because a lot of people are like, but I've never met her before. You know, and you're like, oh no. But but that's it. Do your best. Do your best. Make something up, exaggerate, but make it about them because that's the only thing people care about. It's the only thing people care about, you know? You go see a Spider-Man movie, you don't want to hear about Batman. You know, like it's them. And so my advice is like really like stay on them. It's about them. Make the speech about the couple. Make the speech about the couple. Um Shouldn't Tyrion's trial have had 7 judges, not 3? Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, if everything is supposed to be 7 related. But, you know, I guess does everything need to be 7? Um I don't know. I mean, I get it, but it makes a better story when it's only 3 and you can keep track of them all and stuff like that. I mean, but sure, you're right that if they're so 7 obsessed, that maybe should have been. But um agreed. Dothraki are absurd, but wasn't Sparta a warrior society run on slavery? No such thing as a Spartan farmer. Um, funny, though, no Dothraki ever train. Huh. Were there no Spartan farmers? There had to be, right? Yeah, Sparta had agriculture. Each Spartan had a piece of land. Oh, but no Spartan actually worked the land as they were trained slaves. The land was worked by helots, and the estates were overseen by women. Oh, because they resided in Sacida or the barracks. Oh God, what a horrible society Sparta was. Helots are slaves, essentially. Um, oh my God, Spartans suck. but anyway, I mean, it depends what you say like what is Spartan, and this gets back into like I mean, it kind of vaguely relates to our Starbelly Sneech, Plain Belly Sneech discussion, but like who is a citizen and who is part of the society, like are not slaves part of the society? Are not their women part of the society? I understand that like they're using this limited definition of like a Spartan citizen must be a soldier who lives in the barracks and blah 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 blah. Well, I suppose. I mean, if you define your society as only part of the society that keeps it together, then like that's what's going on. Like slaves are part of society, women are part of society. Even if they don't have citizenship, they're part of society. They're things keeping it together. So um Dothraki, I mean, it's the same situation, right? Because they also have slaves that they keep with them that become part of their society. In fact, um so at the end of a Game of Thrones, Dany is left with her meager Khalasar. The 40,000 people march off and they leave behind their 83 worst, their 83 worst people, who becomes her new Khalasar. And she describes them as sick and weakly young boys, nursing mothers, and freed slaves. So even she like considers the slaves of Dothraki to be Dothraki. Um, and she frees them all and they become her new Khalasar. And then the pathetic little pathetic little Khalasar. It's funny because they're coming. I mean, I'm convinced they're the pathetic Khalasar of Dany is one of those things like the tapestries. They just keep coming. They keep getting mentioned and they haven't done anything yet, but they're so going to do something. And so I am firm, and this is going to be in the fanfic, but like the 83, eventually Dany, like in A Storm of Swords, is like, well, who is like workable among these like pathetic like Dothraki who like out of 40,000 people they left behind like the worst, right? And so she picks like the best 30 who are like still little boys and old men at this point, and they become her scouts. And so she now has this Khalasar of 30, while the other 53 kind of just are in the background. And so she's got this pathetic Khalasar of 30 that's working as her scouts. And then when Ricaro and Ago go off into the Dothraki Sea to find her, they pick 10 men, the 10 best of that pathetic 30, leaving behind like 10. It's 30 odd. She describes it as 30 odd, so it might be 39. I don't know, but leaving behind like whatever 17, 18 Dothraki, and then those pathetic ones are led by Romo, and we hear about them. They're numbered at 20 in the Barristan sample chapter. So I guess he went back to that other group that was not chosen to be scouts and got a few more, but Romo is leading. Romo, the Jakaran, is leading like the worst of the worst, like the worst of the worst Dothraki, are going into battle, but they're honor bound to find Jogo. And so we're gonna have, and meanwhile, Tyrion is trying to rescue hostages, and Drink and Arch are trying to rescue hostages. And so at some point, there's going to be this clusterfuck where everyone's trying to rescue hostages at the same time. Tyrion, Drink and Arch, and the worst of the worst Dothraki, these old men and young boys. But anyway, I was thinking got off. But nonetheless, Dothraki are absurd. Spartans are absurd. What a horrible society. Thank goodness they're gone, Spartans. What a dreadful society. This society where of slavery and gender sex segregation and throwing children into chasms. Does the State Department have a rivalry with other departments like the Department of Defense or CIA? No, I've never heard of, like, being in government. I've never heard of these things like department rivalries. I know that people talk about these sorts of things loosely with like the CIA FBI rivalry and stuff. And it's like, you got to remember that, like, federal employees swap agencies all the time over their career. And, like, you know, to somehow build in this weird rivalry, I mean, I've just never seen it. I can only talk about what I've seen. I've never seen any sort of rivalry between government agencies. You know, I guess I've heard about it in a kind of abstract sense with like military branches, like Marines will joke about like Air Force people or whatever, but I've never seen it with like civilian agencies. I mean, at least with the like the military stuff, you're forced to be in one agency for a number of years, but most people they're swapping all over the place. So I don't know how there could ever be a rivalry. Um, you know, I just don't see it. Um, oh geez. Are there ideological factions in the State Department, or is it uniform? No, and you're not allowed to have an ideological faction. There's a policy, and you have to follow the policy. Like, you know, you don't get like groups of people being like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this," or "We should do this." No, like there is a set policy that everyone has to follow. You don't have like individual people like thinking about stuff and teaming up. And um I mean, if you do, it's over like bureaucratic like shifts and changes or something like within the department. Nothing policy. Keep in mind, policy comes from the president and the ambassadors. Policy does not come from rank and file federal employees. We do what we're told, you know? Like this is like saying, like, in the military, like when a mission is, you know, are there like factions of soldiers like trying to figure out like the best way to do something? No. Like you have marching orders, you have commanders, like that stuff, like ideological stuff like happens way like, and obviously like individual members of the State Department like have their beliefs, like, you know, like that are all over the map, but it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant because you do what you're supposed to do, you know. Do you consider A Song of Ice and Fire great literature, maybe future classic, or just a commercial hit of contemporary sci-fi? Um, that's a very good question, and because I would say it's borderline. It's on the bubble. So I was thinking about this a lot because I was kind of working on a video, and I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but I was like beginning a script on George R. R. Martin's writing style. And, you know, I started comparing it to like other fantasy and sci-fi writers like Stephen King and J.K. Rowling and Tolkien and stuff like that. And then I started like also looking at classics: Herman Melville, Jane Austen, Charles Dickens. And you realize that George R. R. Martin's fucking good. He's fucking good. And when I compare his writing to J.K. Rowling or Tolkien or Stephen King, I'm like, well, no, George R. R. Martin's better. He's better than all of them. He's better than all of them. However, you start comparing it to like the classics, a George Orwell. You're like, no, it's nowhere close. Like it's still where like um I was just thinking like Herman Melville, like does any George R. Martin chapter or book start like Call Me Ishmael? Like where it's just or like it was a time where all the clocks were striking 13. Like, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Like you don't you get great lines. There's great George R. Martin lines, The Dornish prince lay 3 days dying. Like it's great, those are great stuff, but like it's not the same as when you start talking about these like classics where like I haven't even read Jane Austen, but I know that like the first line of one of her novels is like it's something about like it's a time in which men must it was essential that a man have a wife or whatever. Like you kind of know these things because they're such classics. Now and when you read them you're just like, oh, that's fucking good. That's fucking good. So George R. Martin is good. He's really fucking good. He's the best fantasy writer maybe right now. Maybe he's the best fantasy writer in the last 30 years. But when you start talking about like a century of longevity, or something like that, then you kind of step back and you're like, like then you're like, I don't know, he's not Hemingway, right? Like, so we'll see. I mean, certain longevity I'm really surprised at. I'm surprised Dune, for example, or even Tolkien. Like Tolkien is kept around because of his ideas, not because of his writing. Like Tolkien's writing is fine, but it's clunky. It's clunky writing. But his ideas were so revolutionary that he's around. And the same with like like Dune or even 2001 or something, like. But I do wonder like how long that's gonna last. Like I don't know. And then there's these questions of like once something goes into public domain and like why is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle like so enduring when it's not fucking it's fine. Like all of this is fine writing. Doyle is a fine writer, but he's not a fucking great writer. Like, he's not like on the classics level, right? No one's saying like, oh my God, like you need to read The Hound of Baskerville, like right after you finish Romeo and Juliet. Like, no, like no one's doing that, right? So I don't know. It'll be interesting. I'm surprised at certain longevity of certain universes, I want to call them, but I think I think he's borderline great literature, but I don't think he's like up there with the classics. Just curious, where were you on 9/11? 9/11, I was in graduate school and I was late for class and I was in my car and I had a class at 8:30 and I was in my car and on the radio they kind of announced that a plane hit a skyscraper in New York City and there was this weird 10 minutes that many of you, if you were not like paying attention that early in the morning on 9/11, that and it's rarely ever talked about, but for 10 minutes in between the first and the second tower, all the news media were talking about was a history of planes hitting skyscrapers, because apparently this has happened like a few times like in history. And they're like, well, back in like 1933, a plane hit the Empire State Building. Back like a plane hit, and it was like 10 minutes of people talking about the history of planes hitting skyscrapers. It was really weird. And then the second hits, and everyone's like, "Oh God, like we don't know what's going on. There's clearly some terrorist attack." And I kind of arrived, and I was late for class, and I'm just like, I'm not going to go to class. Like, so I waited for class to come out, and I remember telling people um, about it. And already there was like misinformation, people claiming that there were the State Department was bombing, that they were bombing the Washington Monument. All these sort of misinformation was happening in that first hour. And then I remember going to class, my next class at 9:30. And my friend was super upset because his dad worked at the Pentagon and was like, what, worried about his father, so he just had to like leave. And I remember sitting through an entire class, and everyone in the class just being like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And then we get out, and then just I jumped in my car and I drove. I drove to my mother's house in Baltimore, and the highways were just completely empty, and over the sign above it said "Avoid NY Major Incident," and it was the fastest trip from DC to Baltimore I'd ever done in my life. But and then I just I was up with my parents for next couple days. But it was just it's a weird thing. Like people forget about what happened that day, and the weirdness, and what was going on. Related to the Sneetches situation, a lot of people forget that there was misinformation where they started going through like East Jerusalem with a camera, and like random Palestinians are just like waving at the camera, because that's what you do when you go through a poor area of anywhere in the world. People are like, "What? A guy with a camera? What is he doing?" And they come out and they like wave, and they like give thumbs up, and they wave. And I remember like there was like, for some reason they were running news stories about how like Palestinians cheering about like 9/11. It's like, no, they weren't. Like, just stop it. Like, stop it. It was a lot of weird like misinformation in that first the first day and everything. Um, Hey Preston, can you speak to Taiwanese culture and current attitudes towards intellectually disabled people? I can say this about it. I mean, I haven't talked to Taiwanese people about this issue, but I can say about this issue is that I've seen plenty of parents out with intellectually disabled people. I've seen them plenty out and about. I have passed by. They have essentially like daycare programs as well. I've passed by like daycare programs where I see like people taking out like groups of disabled people on like field trips and such. Um, I say like daycare or like nursing home. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like you drop them off for the day, or if that's like a home where they're living. I'm not sure, but I've seen, I've seen, entire like, groups out and about. Um, I mean, I don't see anything. I haven't noticed anything different from how any other culture deals with like intellectually disabled. I mean, families take care of their families, and people want to take care of their families. People seem exhausted by it, obviously. Um, Everyone else goes about their business, and for the most part ignores them, just like in every other society where it's like that's an uncomfortable thing. And so I'm just like, oh, I'm going to look the other direction. Um, so, I mean, I don't see any difference. I know that like, in certain Taiwanese culture is very much about like taking care of your family and protecting your family, and the obligation of protecting your family and taking care of your family. So like, um, everyone does that. Everyone seems to be doing that. Uh, but and society is kind of out there, being awkward the way society is. But I have not noticed anything different than how, say, how American society would would handle it. You know, I don't see people, you know, making fun of them or looking down upon them or anything like that. But um let's see. Any horror media recommendations for spooky month? That's a funny one. Um I'll say this, like I I only kind of enjoy certain types of horror. Like I've seen a lot of horror because you feel compelled to watch it, but um I'm not so much into blood and guts and gore, but I do like more thriller tension build up. There's a lot of horror movies I like. I quite like. Like I really liked Event Horizon, even though that one is kind of gory. I thought that the tension build up was so good. I think the original Halloween is genius, and there's no blood in that movie at all. Um, like I don't care about like creative kills or blood and guts or stuff like that. A lot of people go and see horror for different reasons. I like tension. I like things that are like that make you think and where you're in the fear and moment with the child with the character. I say the child because it's usually like a teenager running around. But so I don't know. I mean, I really liked Event Horizon. I'm trying to think. I think Halloween is just a perfect movie. It's so fucking good. Um, while all the sequels are horrible, like every last sequel is horrible. Um, I'm trying to think. I think the original Nightmare on Elm Street is quite genius. I'm trying to think of any others that like. I think the original Scream is quite good. Um, trying to think of any others. Exorcist 1 and 3 are quite good. Oh, Prince of Darkness. I really like the movie Prince of Darkness. Um, right, that's about the time traveler, right? I don't want to like spoil things, but like, yeah, Prince of Darkness. Um, that's a John Carpenter movie. I fucking love that one. That's a good one. Anyway, um, Starks and Atreides question and comments. Thanks. Um, based on Atreides, Ned equals Leto, Rob plus Cat equals Paul and Jess, Bran equals Leto the second, melding the tree worm, yeah, into trippy times, puppeting. Bloodraven mentions the path in Bran. Do you see any other parallels, Bene Gesserit bloodlines? Um, I mean, I certainly see the parallels you're talking about with Bran and Leto the second, or the second Leto the second, which is people forget there's like there was a first Leto the second, and then there's a second Leto the second in Dune, which I always think is quite funny. So Leto the second, Um, I definitely see obviously the parallels with Bran and Leto the second. I don't know about kind of the parallels between Ned and Leto and Rob and um, Rob and Paul, for example. Like Paul definitely like thinks about the golden path and it's like rejecting the entire system and has questions everything. It's something that Rob never does, or like and Kat has like, I mean, Jess has like connections with the Bene Gesserits and like, you know, knows about the golden path and all these sorts of bloodline shit, and while Kat is clueless. So I'm not sure if like all these parallels hold up. But nonetheless, like there is a lot taken from Dune, and obviously I think the Bene Gesserit and the conspiracy of the Bene Gesserit um is evident in things like Maester Conspiracy or in Bloodraven himself, and thinking about long-term bloodlines and prophecies and fake prophecies and trying to convince people to do things on this grand level. I think George R. R. Martin is taking a lot of that, or at least taking it, or at least it became a sci-fi fantasy trope, and that bleeds into A Song of Ice and Fire later. Because I mean, Bene Gesserit bleeds into Aes Sedai and all sorts of stuff. So I think the Bene Gesserit bloodlines like stuff. I think you're gonna see. I think there's genuinely George R. R. Martin thought about those elements with regards to like Blood Ravens tinkering and Maester conspiracy tinkering and things like that in an anti sense, an anti Bene Gesserit. But I think for the most part, like Stark's based on on the Atreides. I don't know, like there's a real earnest cluelessness to House Stark that just doesn't exist in Dune. In Dune, like just everybody's got this like secret backstory, and it has all sorts of like weird motivations, while the Starks are pretty straightforward. I think Preston Jacobs was the first channel I ever subscribed to, but he likely hates me. Jesus. I probably don't hate people. I don't hate many people. In Planetary, it's found that souls in an electromagnetic field that the souls in an electromagnetic field, and that the heaven and hell are just siege engines in a constant tug of war with souls as the coal. They nuke themselves to cheat this afterlife. Maybe Game of Thrones? Let me think about that for a second. I mean, those are all interesting ideas. I'm just trying to think about like how George thinks about the soul, and George is a little contradictory, because on the one hand, his souls are literally ghosts at various points, but at the same time, he recognizes that like our soul is essentially what we do in life. So like the actions that we take on Earth and how people remember us are also our soul, in changing forms. You have this discussion of like, oh, Bran, you need to remember Nan. And he conflates these things. And like in the Armageddon rag, for example, like this is a conflation of how people remember you and your actions on Earth, like your legacy, versus like actually being a disembodied ghost, right? And in the Armageddon rag, they're one and the same. Like he's talking about all of these great musicians and their ghosts existing, but he's really talking about people remembering those songs and how those songs like affect people, and like how Janis Joplin lives on in all of us because her songs are inside of us. But then there's actually a moment where he like sees disembodied ghost of Janis Joplin. So like, there's this conflation of like an actual like consciousness, disembodied consciousness to like the metaphorical embodiment of what we've done on Earth, like in an existential sense. Like, what are we other than like the things we do? But to actually like describing like the soul as some sort of like odd power, I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if George has thought of that. I've at least never come across anything in his sci-fi writing that kind of describes it like that. Even describing a field, like when you actually like, we kind of all know what a field is, but at the same time we don't. Like you actually like sit and try to describe a field, just you're like, what is that? Like, well, when things are apart, there's this relationship between them, and we call that a field. And you're like, we can kind of feel a field. We kind of understand when we have two magnets. We understand what a field is, but it's like, it's the more you think about it, the less sense it makes. Was the fandom circa 2014 obsessed with John being Neo, Jesus, due to the cliffhanger ending, the theory assuaging the emotional limbo it caused? I never thought about that. That could possibly be it. Um, I mean, I think in general it was affected by fantasy book readers reading other fantasy novels, and so I'm trying to think um, like Wheel of Time, and a lot of people um a lot of people, it was funny when people, because I was seeing a lot of stuff about like, oh, it's been a few years since the Dance with Dragons came out, can you guys recommend any other book series? And it was amazing how often people are like, oh, you should read Wheel of Time. um which is, which Wheel of Time is very much like, there's a chosen one in Wheel of Time. The entire plot is about this, Rand is the chosen one. um that's hard. That's barely a spoiler. You find out Rand's the chosen one pretty early on, like in the first. Find it out in the first book. But so I always thought it was very odd because I was like, huh, like, is there, is Robert Jordan very much like George R. R. Martin? I don't know. Like, I don't, I've read some of Robert Jordan. I don't think there's very much similarity. There's some linguistic similarities, but like when you actually see like how the prose is structured, but plot line and everything, is that the case? But you have a lot of these books like that, Harry Potter coming out at the same time, um, or even the Matrix itself. Um, that there were all these stories of the regular, you know, cis hetero white male protagonist who saves the world kind of thing, right? And so you're in this natural assumption that John is the chosen one. Like, this is a fantasy book. He's got to be the chosen one. Who else is going to be the chosen one? You know. Um, so could the cliffhanger ending add to that? I think if the cliffhanger ending, because I mean the chosen one often dies and comes back as Jesus, right? Jesus comes back, Neo comes back. I guess Rand dies at the end, and comes back. It's everything. Everything is I mean, Rand dies and comes back repeatedly, but like, there's I think maybe that this instant assumption that like John can't be dead, he has to come back. He's Jesus. Like, I think maybe it all uh, filled in like that. Um, but I think they were thinking about John being the chosen one even before that. I think even in the middle of like a storm of swords, he's just too close to being the regular, like the boring hero character. Um, mm, 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 mm. Let's see. Um, End of Bran chapter, a reference to Sand Kings. It is. It is. It was originally the exact quote, but we walked that back and made it a little different. But it's definitely in honor of Sand Kings. There's some. I'll go over the chapter this week. Um, there's but there's some references to Guardians, and there's some references to Sand Kings in there. Um, uh, in case tough voyage in Guardians is referenced in that story a bit, but there's a lot of Easter eggs in it. But yes, the end is a reference to Sand Kings. But I'll talk about it all this week. Um, Classics bore me to tears. The universal themes don't speak to me. It's true. Maybe depends. Preston is obsessed with open sentences. A bit. George R. R. Martin is very obsessed with them too, but Um, any recommendations of new fiction you have read? What was I reading? I mean, it's hard to read these days, but I don't know. I like Salman Rushdie. I like Umberto Eco. Um, I don't know. There's a I like David Foster Wallace. If you can get past like uh, too many big words or things like that. But I don't know. It's I don't know. I wish I was. I've said this a lot. I wish I was a bigger reader. I wish I could have like when people are like, "Oh, what are you reading?" and then I can like tell people, and people go, "Oh yeah, no, that's you're so smart. You read so much. That's so great." Event Horizon, the prequel to Warhammer 40K. Huh. That'd be I didn't think about that. Warhammer 40K is rather funny, the funny history because it's so essentially um you have this idea of like space marines, right? And that was from aliens. And they're like, okay, what if we come up with like a battle game where we have like space marines like fighting each other, and then just to be kind of lazy because they don't want to create new molds, they're like, and then there's like the evil space marines, so you got the space marines and the evil space marines, and then they're gonna fight. You know, and so those became the chaos marines, right? And then when they finally added gene stealers, they're just a complete copy of the xenomorphs. And so it's just the same stuff, but then it became this very very kind of rich over time, just adding little things. 40 Warhammer 40K became this very very rich universe, I have to say. But it's I think it does kind of need hope. I think you just can't have it be this like destructive thing forever. um but I watched an interesting video once about how like actually there's a lot of hope in Warhammer 40K. People just don't realize it. Like this problem, the problems of the galaxy are actually quite solvable, and it's not that big of a deal. Like I was like, oh okay. It was very convincing. It was actually a very convincing video about how like the Warhammer 40K universe is not doomed at all. Um, Will a fanfic talk about the Valonqar prophecy? Yes, yes. It kind of already did a little bit um, in the prologue. In the prologue, there's some discussion about Maggie the Frog and who Maggie the Frog is, and so there's a little bit there, but we'll get back. We'll get when we get to Cersei. It's definitely gonna come back again. Um, but again, generally speaking, prophecies are kind of are either bull or put there by a puppet master or time traveling Bran. You know, great Bran chapter. Assume better ending than the show. Thanks, Bran. Bran took a lot of time. I was very worried about it. On the one hand, like I kind of knew, when I finish a lot when we finish a lot of these chapters, like I have varying degrees of confidence. Like when I finished Tyrion, I was like, ah, like the prose is so good, but like it doesn't go anywhere, and I felt very insecure about it. Bran was kind of the reverse. I'm like, I knew that the events that we had unfold in Bran were awesome. Like I kind of knew. I was just like, yeah, this is pretty fucking gold. I just wanted to get the prose right to make it feel like Bran and make it feel beautiful and sad and have all of these conversations like go. Certain ones I'm more confident than others. Like when prologue was finished, I was like, oh, this prologue is great. When Bravo was finished, I was like, this is a great story by itself. I think that might be it. Is if I feel it's a good story by itself, like if it stands on its own, I'm kind of very happy. And like if it has an emotional punch, and so those are the ones I'm most confident about. But you know, I wanted the language to be right, so it's like like the back and forth with the editors on it just went forever and forever and forever, and there were a lot of changes that happened. And I'll talk about it when I go over it, but there was a bit of an evolution of how things are structured. Overall, the general plot though was pretty down pack, and you know it I think it came out pretty well. I mean, I'm pretty I kind of knew. I was like, this is good. This is good. I just want the writing, the writing to feel Bran and to be as emotional as possible. But I kind of knew that like what Bran did in like the events that Bran went through, like finding Dark Sister, going and having his visions and talking to Bloodraven about his history and Cold Hands, and then feeling mistrust, and then going off and going to the door and having the Walder scene and finding the bodies. Like I knew all of those events were the right things to happen. Like I was very confident of that, but I wanted all of the writing to be right, and so the editors really helped me with that. Plus, we had good submissions to start with. There were a lot of great submissions to start with. Let's see here. PJ, how would you fix Mexico so it's no more fucked up than, let's say, Canada? Scandinavia was pretty cool, but got crappy weather and food kind of sucks. I mean, to be honest, I know very little of Mexican history and politics. What I can probably say is that from the little I know that like crime tends to be a big issue, and that crime is largely funded by American drug money, Americans buying drugs, funneling that money funnels back into Mexico. It creates a lot of crime, and that crime affects stability in Mexico, and even affects politics. And so, I mean, I think a big aspect of fixing Mexico is fixing America's drug problem, which is hard. But I think obviously, more treatment programs in America, more legalization, decriminalization of a lot of drugs, I think is probably a solution. Have drugs be legal, taxed in America, and that way that money doesn't funnel to Mexican crime organizations, and that'll help stabilize Mexico in general. But there's probably, Mexico's a huge country with a lot of people, and for the most part, on a global scale, let's give Mexico a hand. Like they're doing, considering how many people they have and all of the problems they're dealing with, they're keeping it together fairly well. So let's not disparage Mexico too much. They're on a global scale, they're doing okay. They're doing okay, middle of the pack at least. So it's but yeah, I think Mexico's problems are largely America's problems. But I don't know. I'd like to see eventually a kind of North American Union situation where there's free flow between the three countries of North America. But we'll see. Do you like Jurassic Park as a sci-fi franchise? I have only seen the first 3 Jurassic Parks. And I think the original Jurassic Park is quite fun. It's quite good. The rest of them are kind of forgettable, and I think I'm not sure why I don't connect with them very much. I think it's like, well, I know the protagonists are not going to die, and then I kind of know that these secondary characters are, so it becomes kind of a slasher like a flick where it's just like which people are gonna get killed off. I mean, granted, I have not seen Jurassic World. I don't know the plots of those ones, but like it does just seem like it doesn't seem like there's the stakes are very high in Jurassic Park movies. I just it seems like the heroes are never gonna die. Everybody else is gonna get picked off by our CGI creations, and so it's like I'm watching Friday the 13th. Um, correct me if the new movies are more interesting, but I'm like not dazzled by the special effects anymore. It's not like the original Jurassic Park, which actually had relatively few CGI scenes and stuff like that. So, in the grand scheme of things, so um, it's not just crime; it's guns too. Yeah, yeah. I mean, America has to solve its gun problem. Stop producing guns. Those guns like get sent to Mexico. So I think the more more than a lot of countries. I mean, America can be blamed for a lot, but come on, like America's problems affecting Mexico is pretty obvious. Like, um, but yeah, I don't know. Jurassic Park. Yeah, Jurassic Park books are both fantastic, but Jurassic Park 1 and 2 are both good movies. 3 is at least fun nonsense. The world movies are bad. Yeah, I've actually read the first 2 Jurassic Park novels. I read Jurassic Park and the Lost World a long time ago. Um, I do kind of think it's interesting now to look at them as Westworld. The fact that like Michael Crichton wrote Westworld and Jurassic Park is the same story again, which is kind of a fascinating kind of meta thing to think about. Um, that you know scientists come up with something and then they make it into an amusement park, and then the amusement park goes awry and starts killing the visitors. Like it's the exact same story. They just did it again. Have you ever read or heard of the Dresden Files? Not amazingly well written, but incredible world urban fantasy going on 18 books. Um, I have not. Let me see this. Dresden Files. Mm-mm-mm. Oh, yeah. Okay. Television series based on it in the Sci-Fi Channel. Oh, that's too bad. Interesting. And the series is still going. Oh, geez. 18 books. Huh. And the plot is in a world. The magic is real alongside vampires, demons, spirits, fairies, werewolves. Um, Large portions of the globe are under control of supernatural factions. Oh, I see. And so it's like a modern kind of political fight between these non-human creatures on like what large country scales. Um, Harry Dresden is the only advertising wizard in the United States, living in Chicago, investigating supernatural cases on behalf of both human and non-human clients. Hmm. No, but I've not read it, but it's interesting nonetheless. Let's see here. Um, uh, yeah, right. North American Union, pretty cool, right? Although the U.S. Mexico, and Canada would probably dominate it. Yeah, I mean, so the reason why like something like a North American Union would make sense is you're talking about free flow of labor. So right now we have NAFTA, where so like U.S. America and Mexico, I mean U.S. Canada and Mexico have free flow of like commercial products, but we don't have free flow of labor. You know, there are on certain industries you can get like day workers to cross over and stuff like that, but for the most part, um, like that's a limiting factor. And so if one had free flow of labor where people could go back and forth, they just kind of have more freedom of commerce, and there'd probably be a larger economic boom. Um, Now, I think people like worry about this for a couple reasons. Like one, they have this idea that Mexicans are going to steal our jobs, kind of idea, which probably not. I mean, there's plenty of there would be job opportunities in Mexico for the Americans. So like, you know, people would have like it's politically probably nothing something that wouldn't happen. But then there's these people worry about the Mexicans would be taking all these social programs and stuff like that, and it's like, well, maybe they should. Maybe we should have social programs for them. That it would also be very beneficial. I mean, in the sense that if you put all Mexicans and Canadians, say, into the U.S. Social Security system, Mexico has a younger population, so you actually be able to like keep things like Medicare and Social Security going and stuff like that if you had like a larger pool and a younger pool, because United States is an aging population. But yeah, these are pipe dreams though. But it's like I look at Europe and the awesomeness of free flow of labor and the fact that you can kind of go anywhere you want and work. It's a very nice concept. But I'm very into kind of like freedom of movement and things like that. Dresden is great. He likes to bury hints, subplots for the future in early installments as well, and fairly complex. Just not quite as literary. Yeah, some people are more the idea people. Like, I was reading some of Harry Potter and I realized like, well, J.K. Rowling is, she's more of an idea person. Her writing's not great. But obviously it connects with people. Isaac Asimov's writing is horrible. And yet he was like such an idea person. And so it's so it's stuff. Let me see. The author guy, his name is Jim Butcher. He's only 51. Man, so he's a young guy. He's gonna be doing this for a while. So he's got man, he's been doing this for a long time. He's gonna keep doing it. 51 years old. He's gonna have like 20 more books before it's all done. Carmine's like, here I am stealing your job. It's true. The Latino. The Hot Pie stole my job. Did we already talk about, I don't know if I already talked about this with Carmine on whether or not Brazilians are Hispanic and how it's like it's like kind of a mystery thing, because Carmine refers to himself as Latino, but he's Portuguese speaking, so he's not Spanish speaking, so it's like can he be considered Hispanic? And the question is no one kind of knows, considering Hispanic comes from the word Hispanus, which refers to the entire Iberian Peninsula, which would include Portugal. So, in a sense, you could think of Portuguese as Hispanic because they're from Hispanus, and therefore, like, he's Hispanic as well. But in practice, we use Hispanic for Spanish speakers, and Latino for all of Latin America. Speaking of Asimov, Foundation podcast with Carmine. I haven't watched Foundation yet. Carmine fucking loves it. When Carmine eventually gets his own stream, he will probably have Foundation-based streams. But he fucking loves Foundation. He thinks it's like, if not the number 1, number 2 show he saw like last year. Oh yeah, let's pull him in. Hello.
I saw someone say Carmine must love the term Latinx, and I think I speak for a lot of Latin people when I say, if you use the term Latinx, you're pendejex, and I'm leaving it at that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a toughie because you're talking about like these built-in problems of the language, and it relates to, I mean, it relates to English in a smaller degree, but when we use, somebody's not their not preferred pronoun and we slip into it, and or something like that, like what do we do? Well, our language is kind of built that way. It's really difficult to make these changes, and it's much more difficult in Romance languages where gender has been assigned to various words, and so you have to call somebody a Latinx. Like, why wouldn't I've heard better solutions where they're like, why don't they put an "eh" at the end, and everybody can be Latina instead of Latino or Latina, Latina, and why Latinx? Like it seems.
It's
It's like,
second generation Latin people who can't even fucking say burrito correctly. Just they need something to feel special. That's basically what it
but
is.
it's trying. I mean, it's also trying to get in. Like it's the exact same reason. It's literally the exact same reason that Elon Musk renamed Twitter. That there's something cool about the letter X, like Latinx, like it's totally that too, right? Because like logically speaking, it should be Latine, right? Or like something a little more easy than, because nothing flows off the tongue. Like Latinx doesn't flow off the tongue. My amigex. My good amigex. you know. So Carmine, how you been?
Eh, I've been a thing. I've been here,
Were
kind
were
of.
were were you surprised by our wild cards discussion at the beginning? It was not what you were expecting.
It's not what I was expecting. Honestly, that was a very good way, tactful way to tackle that situation.
I mean, it's kind of funny. I mean, everybody's like, a lot of people are like, "Oh my god, it's such a loaded thing." I was like, "No, I'm not. I wasn't like I wasn't like making connections that weren't there. I wasn't like twisting things around. It was that's where Skahaz comes from, and the Hound and things like that. It appeared in
Real
wild
quick,
cards. Mm.
did you did a podcast with Amber, right, about Wheel of Time episode 8?
Yes,
Okay, she has to put it out.
yeah, I'm sure she's gonna put it up soon or something.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But that is coming. That is coming.
We can talk about later if you want, like Brandon Sanderson being an asshole about episode 8.
Oh,
You see
yeah,
that on Twitter?
I did. I talked a little bit about it with her. For
Oh,
those
during
that
the
don't know,
podcast?
a friend of the channel, Amber, and her channel, Road to uh, uh, Torvalar. I'm trying to get it. I want to get it.
Tarvalon.
Tarvalon. I'm sorry.
I haven't even seen season 8 yet. I know the name of it. I know the
Road to
name of that place.
Tarvalon. They actually say They actually say the name of her channel in season 2. They're like, "Where are
No,
they?" And they're like, "They're
really.
on the road to Tarvalon." And I was like,
Oh,
really? Okay. Like actually, there's actually a line in the middle of the season where they're like, where they say the name of her channel. Um, we talk about it a little bit, but yeah, Brandon Sanderson, he acted like a fucking dick and was like, why
the
did they
best
do
way to
this and this
describe
and
it
like, was that?
The best way to describe it for people who don't know what we're talking about, for those of you who don't know, George R. R. Martin has these two people who were the first super fans, Elio and Linda, and they helped George R. R. Martin with a lot of the stuff. The best way
Mm,
to describe what happened with Brandon Sanderson is, imagine if Preston is watching season 5 finale for the first time and he invited Elio and Linda on, and Elio and Linda have already seen the episode. And they say, yeah, this sucks. This was terrible. We tried getting him to change it. Yeah, this was not that great. If that happened, Elio and Linda, hypothetically in this scenario, would be conducting themselves in a very poor way. They'd be assholes, essentially. And,
yeah,
you know, yeah, that's essentially what happened with Brandon Sanderson. He was kind of a douche. Kind of a
yeah.
douche.
Um, Brandon Sanderson. I mean, Brandon Sanderson. I don't know how I feel about like Brandon Sanderson's whole connection to Wheel of Time and everything. Because having read Robert Jordan's writing, Robert Jordan has an astoundingly different writing style to Brandon Sanderson. Like they are very different. Um, And for people that like finish the series, they kind of know that like, yeah, okay, he wrapped it up plot wise as well as anyone could. But then the negative side is it's in a completely different writing style, like completely and utterly different writing style. But nonetheless, because he wrote the last two books, they pulled him in as an advisor on the Wheel of Time show, and so he had various recommendations to make. But showrunners do what they do, and in many ways I understand like all of the choices that Wheel of Time did that deviated from the books. I understand them, um like case in point, like uh the Wheel of Time show spends a lot of time focusing on the character of Moraine, which is played by Rosamund Pike, and a lot of times it's at the detriment of the story. Like why are we going back to Rosamund? Why are we going back to Moraine? She's not doing anything. This is very, and it's the equivalent of, well, first of all, Rosamund Pike is the biggest star in your show. She's the
She's like the
middle of
Sean
your
Bean.
fucking like poster. She's the
Yeah, she's like
draw.
Sean Bean she's
Yeah,
Ned
she's the
Stark
Sean Bean.
essentially.
So like, of course you're gonna give her screen time, but then also like she's gonna do stuff later. So it's sort of like the Theon plot of season 1 of Game of Thrones. Like Theon is only a character really in Game of Thrones in um in A Clash of Kings. It's the same with Jaime. He's not really a character until A Storm of Swords. But you've got these actors on contract, and you've got to like give them something to do. So like when I watch those early seasons of Game of Thrones and I see like the made up invented scenes for Jaime and the made up invented scenes for Theon, like I understand why they're there. And it's like I don't really blame them. I'm like, okay, the Theon Roz plot was stupid. It didn't do anything. But I understand. I understand why they had to do it. And so it's the same thing. Like, and there's nothing I saw in Wheel of Time where I'm not like, I I I get it. I get it. I get why they deviated there. I get why they did that. And so for Brandon Sanderson to like criticize them for like going off of book material or switching because of something, I'm just like, no, I don't know. Like I kind of agree with all of their decisions for the most part. I don't know.
To add on to that, the whole Theon Roz plot, at first I always thought like the audience would forget who Theon is because he
Mm.
doesn't have that many scenes. But at the same time, they completely admitted. Don't forget Devin's super chat, by the way. You
Oh, I'm
skipped
sorry.
over it right there.
Well,
At the
no, we
same
talked about
time,
it a bit. I said that like when I haven't watched it, but I know Carmine loves Foundation, and when he starts his own
Foundation
stream,
season 2 is the best show of 2023, hands down.
yeah,
But Dave and Dan admitted the reason they put a lot of those like original scenes in there was to pad out the time. They fully admitted that in
yeah, but but
the
you
book.
need you've got him on contract. Like you need to give Jamie and Theon things to do. I understand it. You know, I mean, I remember reading A Clash of Kings for the first time and being like, "Who is Theon?" Like like that completely happened to me, where I'm like, "Who is Theon?" Oh right, he's this background character that like so I get it. It's all right. It's I don't fault I can fault Dan and Dave for a lot of things, but I don't fault them for the Theon Ross plot. um you think the best justification to burn Shireen is her grayscale reactivating? With this and losing Stannis, could give up the crown and become Lord Commander. um I think the I think the tragedy of Shireen would be that she's uselessly like burned and killed. This idea that like it's for nothing. You murdered a child for nothing. Um and so which is why I like the show actually even had like the weather change, but then Stannis immediately dies. So it was kind of for nothing. But like I think like the wildlings killing Shireen because they're fearful that her grayscale will reactivate, or killing Shireen because they think it's going to resurrect Stannis, um, is I think more interesting and sadder than than uh, than anything else. If Shireen, if that's even going to happen still. Like we know that's kind of original plot, but who knows? Maybe Justin Massey will get her and they'll escape. Who knows? Who knows? But I think the whole thing is that like there should be no justification for killing children. And any justification you have probably sucks. Like don't kill kids. Like
What
it's
if what
amazing.
if the children had like what if the child had like a remote control that would launch all the nukes at once on the Earth? I mean, I feel
Yeah,
like
I mean, I understand that there's all of these like hypothetical situations where you're like, well, maybe we should kill a kid if this happens. But the thing is like we instead live in this world where we're nowhere close to those and people are still killing the kids. like like I understand that yes, like there are the hypothetical situations where, you would kill a kid. We never even get to those. People are just killing kids before that for no reason. That's the sad thing about the world. Like when there's a million other solutions, they're killing kids. Like, oh god. Oh, you jump to that. Getting back to star belly sneeches and plain belly sneeches.
so. What if the kid had like? Yeah, never mind.
Oh man. Carmine, you cut out there. Are you still there?
No, no, I did that on purpose.
Okay, okay. Dresden, not everyone knowing the magic and related stuff is real. It's hilarious and interesting. Spike from Buffy reads the audiobook so good. Oh, that's interesting. He's got a great voice. Um,
The Dresden Files is like I remember you talking about how you and your wife had a conversation about J.K. Rowling and how she said J.K. Rowling, not a great writer, good storyteller. Same thing with
mm,
this guy with the Dresden
yeah, yeah,
Files.
yeah. Um, Carmine, explain the genetic dynasty to Preston.
That's a spoiler. You got yo. By the way,
This
someone
is
told me to check
Foundation.
out. Yes, someone told me to check out Fleabag, which I am downloading it now.
Mm.
But you got to get on,
I think I told you to
motherfucking.
check out Fleabag.
No, no, someone I spoke to today told me to also check
Oh,
out Fleabag, and they're like, "Yeah, look on Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic. It has glowing reviews across the board, and it does." So that really piqued my interest. So I'm gonna check out Fleabag fairly soon. I have a lot of stuff to catch up on: Castlevania, Wheel of
yeah.
Time. I haven't even started yet.
I am of the belief that Fleabag season 1 is fucking great and Fleabag season 2 is mid. Most people disagree with me and say that they think Fleabag season 2 is the better one. But I am more of Fleabag season 1 is fucking incredible. Um
By the way, you were 110% correct about that episode of Barry season 3, Jenny and fuck, I forgot the name of it. It's the one where like he has to attack the guy, the karate champion guy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you were right about that. It's a I could see what you were saying. It's a hit and a miss. Like you're either
Right,
gonna
right.
really love it or
Are you
gonna hate it.
finally getting through Barry? You're finally watching Barry?
Uh, I just watched that one episode because everybody and their mother recommended it. Everybody was recommending that
Right,
one
right.
episode, and I asked you about it.
So what Carmine's talking about is in the middle of Barry, there's this random episode that has nothing to do with anything where they just go on like this almost dreamlike adventure of fighting like this karate kid and running around this town and just crazy stuff happens and it just like doesn't really it doesn't advance the plot. Like nobody acts rationally. It's just like it's a complete fantasy world almost. It doesn't thematically fit with anything else before or after. Um and so some people are it's like their favorite episode because it's this like weird goofy spoof farce dreamlike episode. But I'm just like, yeah, I mean it's fun at the time, but then you're just like, why is this here? It's just um but yeah. So you watched it, you enjoyed it, but then looking back on it, you're like, what was the point?
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually
Oh.
tried looking up the fate of that little girl, the fucking spider monkey girl,
Mm.
who was just like, whatever happens to her, does she come back? No, she
No.
doesn't.
No. No. That's the thing. It doesn't
That
come
that's
back at
that
all.
show's Russian guy. For those of you who don't remember, in The Sopranos, the
Yeah.
Russian guy, the Baron Pie. Yeah, that's that show's Russian guy. Does he come back? I don't know.
Yeah. 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 Um. Yeah, Ron and Lily episode is like that. Is like an episode of Atlanta. It's kind of true. Like, there's there's various like fantasy episodes of Atlanta that are really weird. That don't that are even though there's like a kind of general plot to Atlanta. There's also just like stuff that's just like off the wall. There's a particular episode in which um uh Donald Glover goes and he meets um, Justin Bieber, who is playing basketball in a like a charity game. Except they've decided to have Justin Bieber played by a black kid in the episode.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
No.
and he.
What is this episode's name? I need
Oh
to
my god,
download this
it's yeah.
immediately. I
So
need to download this immediately.
yes,
What is
and so I mean, it's obviously the statement about like just like what if like how we treat Justin Bieber and think about Justin Bieber and like how Bieber is able to do all this like irresponsible crazy stuff and then be forgiven and be the heartthrob of all these little girls and stuff like this and like what if he were a black kid would how would we feel about that and if he acted in the exact same way and so that's you know
I
it
don't know about that, cause then you have like that guy, the baby, the rapper,
mm-hmm.
the baby, who like shot a guy and is now like a millionaire. He like
Oh
killed a
yeah,
man
I
in
mean
Walmart, I believe, and
I think Atlanta is a relatively sloppy show. That
uh,
I mean, as much praise as Atlanta gets, and I think there are good episodes of Atlanta. I think it's a good like everything's a good first draft. Like had
let me
somebody come
see.
back and been like, let's work on this a little more. But instead, everyone's like, just go forward. You're a genius, Donald Glover. You're a genius. And it's just like sometimes it's like, oh god, like no, you needed more work
I'm
on that.
downloading it right now. I think it's season 1, episode
Yeah.
5, according to this right
There's a
here.
few of these things like so I think one of the most memorable things from Atlanta is this episode where and again it's this like fantasy has nothing to do with the episode for the most part but like there's this black guy who is he's trans white. He's like decided that yeah.
What? What?
Yeah,
What is this show?
I
What am I
know.
missing?
and 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 of course it's ridiculous and hilarious to see this like black guy going around like trying to act white and being like I don't know why people like treat me I want people to address me as a white person and like give me the respect of a white person um and um and you're like okay like at first it's like ridiculous and you kind of laugh at it but then you're like what political statement are you saying, Donald Glover? Like are you saying that trans people like are ridiculous? Like is it is that what you're saying? Like when you're comparing it to sex and gender, are you saying those people are as ridiculous as this black person pretending to be white? Like what statement are you making? And
I'm
you
assuming that's piggybacking off the Rachel Dolezal thing.
right, well, yeah, but like it's sloppy because if you talk to Donald Glover, he'd be like, "I'm sorry, I actually am fine with trans people." I then what joke were you making? Oh, you were being sloppy. Like that's Atlanta. Like like there's stuff where you kind of laugh and go, okay, that's a crazy idea, but what are you actually trying to say? Like, is that
let
really
me
true
give
about Justin Bieber?
Let
Like
me give a context to Rachel Dolezal. Rachel
yeah.
Dolezal is this woman who was the president of the NAACP, which stands for the National Association of Advancement of Colored People, and she was the president of it. And she did a very great job until it came out that she wasn't actually black, and she got that was a
Um
whole controversy. She swore that she was, but she was not.
no,
That was not a thing.
let's see. Yeah, she was I'm trying to think like oh, she was a chapter president.
Mm.
She was not
Chapter
like the
president.
head of
Yes.
the whole thing. She was the head of her like local chapter.
Mm,
I was about to be like, if she was the national president of the NAACP, that would be like fucking
that would be even more
crazy.
funny.
But no, it was, she was the chapter. But yeah, she was essentially black passing, even though she was white.
Wait. Carson, is that true? She does OnlyFans? No, she doesn't do. Is that
Maybe I think I might have heard something
really?
about that. Yeah.
No. Link me on Twitter for science. But I'm sorry, Carson. Continue.
um, but yeah, this is my weird feelings on Atlanta. Did you ever see the Clerks movie? Thought on the franchise? Yes. We actually recently, Carmine and I were just actually chatting about uh, Kevin Smith and the Clerks franchise. Um, Kevin Smith is and Patrick H. Williams has a video on Kevin Smith that like does everything much better than I could ever explain here. But um, keep in mind that like being a comic book fan from back in the day before the internet, comic books were not cool, and discovering comic books and being into comic books was a very lonely experience. In order and to find comic books and to read comic books and to make sense of them was very difficult because they'd be very complicated stories and you'd need to have back issues from sometimes 10, 20, 30, 40 years in the past. And this wasn't available online and there weren't compilation stuff, okay? So like you had two options. You could like go to the comic book shop, you could drive to like a comic book shop in your town somewhere, often miles, many miles away, and try to find a back issue and hope that it was affordable. Or you could like chat with people about like find another comic fan and then ask them questions and talk about things. You know, and there was also like the guide to the Marvel universe, but again, like even finding those issues was very difficult. I spent many years like finding all of the Marvel universe like issues. Like I purposely collected them at one point. I still have my collection, but like it was very difficult to find them all. Um, and so comic books was this like niche, uncool thing, and then and talking about like nerd culture stuff, Star Wars and stuff was an uncool thing. And so when Kevin Smith like came out with Clerks, which is essentially what Carmine and I do every day here, like dudes shitting like talking around talking shit about like comic books and sex and whatever and movies, like that was the first time anybody had ever seen anything like that. And so Clerks was a big deal, like, and Kevin Smith was seen as this like revolutionary director who was gonna like he was not only like bringing in nerd culture into the pop culture, but he was making small indie films cool to make and stuff like that. And there was a lot of promise with Kevin Smith movies, like, and I thought Mallrats was so funny, and then Chasing Amy came out, and everybody was praising it, and then Kevin Smith kind of like fell off and never did anything too interesting after that, and now is just like this purple blazer guy who talks about smoking weed and is like overly positive about everything and is more of a podcaster than a director. But keep in mind that like he was a serious director at some point. He was like this up and coming serious director. Um, and so like Clerks was very special like when it came out, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I actually was a bigger fan of Mallrats. Um, uh, but kind of looking back on it all, he just did so many he never grew out of it. He's like the prodigy kid who goes to college at 16 and then doesn't do anything else very interesting with his life. Yeah, okay. The greatest thing he ever did was go to college at 16, that kind of stuff. And so I don't know. I do appreciate like the history of like what Kevin Smith did and how important it was, and um, it was a different time. It represents, it he speaks very much to me, like my age, like how I talk to my friends. I mean, he's from Jersey, and it's not that different from Baltimore and things like that. But in the end, he never really grew. Um, though I will grant that in one of his most recent movies, Jay and Silent Bob Rebooted, which is a worthless movie except for there's this one line at the end in which Ben Affleck says, "You go through life thinking you're Thomas Wayne, or you go through life thinking you're Batman, and then you realize you're Thomas Wayne," is just like a fucking genius line. I'm like, oh god, he still has like these moments of fucking genius. But man, um, but yeah, Kevin Smith. Watch the Patrick H. Williams like video on him. It's pretty fucking great. Um, uh, okay. I always appreciate appreciate your feedback on foreign affairs. You provide a unique perspective. Will you please explain why Arabic Muslim nations like Egypt are not accepting Palestinians? What should the U.S. do? Um, so when talking about the star belly sneeches and the plain belly sneeches, one thing that and this is rather important, is about these classifications of religion and ethnicity. And religion, ethnicity, and everything is a largely imagined thing. But like, you got to understand that like, from an Egyptian perspective and from a Palestinian perspective and from a is very different than the Israeli perspective. When you talk to an Israeli, they'll talk about their conflict as Jew versus Arab. They'll talk about the Arabs, the Arabs. Now, what does the Arab mean? Now, within Israel, the Arab means a collective term to refer to Palestinians, Druze, and Bedouin. Okay? Who are three different ethnic groups, but they all speak Arabic. So they're Arab. Okay? That's all Arab is. Arab is an ethnicity of people that speak Arabic. Okay? So, they speak different types of Arabic, by the way. The Druze kind of speak Assyrian Arabic. The Palestinians speak Palestinian Arabic. The Bedouins, their Arabic is a little different. There's a kind of a Sinai Arabic that's kind of a mixture between Egyptian and Palestinian, Jordanian Arabic, anyway. But nonetheless, the Arabics are different. And so using a blanket term like Arab doesn't really make much sense. It's like using the term romance and throwing all people that speak Romance languages together as some sort of like unified ethnic group. Now, keep in mind that like Middle Easterners have like they also have done these things too. Nasser had an entire movement where he tried to create a unified Arab identity. And they tried to create modern standard Arabic that no one speaks. So like, it's not like there weren't attempts to create the idea of a pan-Arab ethnicity, but for the most part, no one thinks that there is a pan-Arab ethnicity. Israelis will often talk about the Arabs. It doesn't make sense. Okay, so when you say like, why won't Egyptians accept Palestinians? Why would they? Why would they any more than Israelis? Egyptians do not think Palestinians are Egyptians. They do not think they're citizens of their country. Israelis do not think Palestinians, or at least certainly not the ones in Gaza. I mean, it gets very complicated with when we start talking about what a Palestinian is, because there's Palestinians with Israeli citizenship, there's Jerusalem Palestinians, there's Palestinians in annexed territories, there's Palestinians in the West Bank, there's Palestinians in Gaza, there's Palestinians in refugee camps in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Syria. So like, what is a Palestinian? It's really hard. And when you say like, oh, the Palestinians and the Israelis need to come to like a peace agreement, which Palestinians? Because there's no unified Palestinian group. There's no unified Palestine. There's no unified Arabs. So like when you say like, explain why Arabic Muslim nations, well, I mean like Egypt is 10% Christian, but okay. The government declares itself a Muslim nation. It's true. But like, and Gazans, there's Christian Gazans too. Not many Christian Gazans. There's more Christians among Palestinians in the West Bank, but there are Christian Gazans. Okay, so it's not. I mean, it's less than 1%, but there are Christian Gazans. Um, so like, why would the Egyptians take them in? Why were the Egyptians taking them in? And the thing is, when you talk to a lot of Israelis, like the extremist Israelis, like they believe that the Arabs that the Palestinian people are a fictitious thing, and that they're actually just Jordanians and Egyptians, and that they should be pushed into those countries. That there is a home country for the Palestinians. It's called Jordan. Push them there. There is a home country for Gazans. It's called Egypt. Let's push them there. Like that is a far right wing position. But Palestinians are not Egyptians. They speak a completely different language. They have different food. They have different customs. They are a different people. Egyptians do not think they are Egyptian. Okay? So, when you say like, why won't they take them in? For the exact same reason that the Israelis do not want them to. It's the exact same reason.
I always thought that the reason Egypt and all these other neighboring Arabic countries didn't want to take Palestinians in is because they don't want a repeat of the Black September incident, where
Absolutely.
you probably know more about this than I do. I know about it
Mm-hmm.
in passing. The Palestinian Liberation Organization,
Absolutely.
they fled, or I think they were driven to Jordan, and then they over time grew in such power in Jordan that they tried to assassinate the ruler of Jordan, and it became like this whole civil war because they got just so much power and all this
Mm-hmm.
other stuff happening. I'm assuming Egypt and Syria don't want that situation happening over there on them.
That's absolutely you're absolutely the case. Absolutely right. So Jordan did take in a lot of Palestinian refugees, and eventually, at least the Palestinians that were in the West Bank were given citizenship in Jordan, and now 70% of the Jordanian population are Jordanian refugees. And yes, those Palestinians in Jordan did try to take over the government and make it their own nation. Yes. So you can understand, like, put it in a Jordanian perspective, like how tolerant Jordanians are. They took like now 70% of their country is Palestinian. The king is married to a Palestinian. And they tried to take over your country once. You can imagine like how a Jordanian feels about Palestinians, you know? It's pretty amazing, right? Now, Gazan refugees in Jordan are not given citizenship. So Gazan refugees that live in Jordan are in a nebulous state because they believe that the Jordanians believe that they have no responsibility for the refugees, the Gazan refugees. They have some responsibility for the West Bank refugees because Jordan did occupy the West Bank for a period of time between the Israeli War for Independence and the 7 Day War. Jordan did have the West Bank, and it was taken from them by Israel after the 7 Day War. And so, yeah, they straight up like accepted these refugees and gave them citizenship, which is it's pretty incredible for Jordan. Like how Jordan has even kept it together is just like amazing through a lot of aid, but like it's pretty insane. Now, those Palestinians were not given citizenship in Syria or in Lebanon or in Egypt or things like that. So like you um, or there are Palestinians in other places too, but there are specifically camps. There are still Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon and Syria. There's still Palestinian refugee camps in Jordan. They've largely grown into cities. The Gazan refugee camps are still there with non-citizens, and but yeah, they were not given citizenship, and for various reasons, because Palestinians are largely Sunni Muslim. They changed the shift of power in places like Lebanon and Syria, so they will not be given citizenship. But because there's some Shia Sunni issues with Lebanon and Syria. But yeah, Um, but what should the U.S. do? I mean, nothing. The U.S. I don't know if the U.S. can do anything. I mean, the U.S. can't do much. I mean, these people. This is about like changing laws in the Middle East, where the Middle East needs to start not having religious states and having equal rights. And once that's done, the problem goes away. But politicians, they don't want to do that. They think, oh, the people won't accept it. They don't want these equal rights. They don't want secular governance. Maybe they don't, but that's the solution. You know, you don't want to be vaccinated, and then you keep getting sick. Why do I keep getting polio? Get the fucking polio vaccination. Like that's it. Oh, they don't want the polio vaccination. Well, that's the solution. The solution is secular governance and equality. That's the solution. Piggybacking on the planetary and souls comment. Um, let's see. I'm sure what is piggyback.
Preston just looking for this motherfucker's comment.
Yeah, I know.
He messed up. He did another one.
Okay. Coming down. What I find most disgusting about the entire uh, Starbelly Sneetches versus Plainbelly Sneetches problem is that even when we're talking about something as ridiculous as Starbelly Sneetches and Plainbelly Sneetches, or something as horrible as racial segregation in America, which existed, and we ended, you know, where you had two sets of rights for two different types of people. At least race is like a real thing. like at least like when a baby is born black, they're a black baby. But what's weird about the Middle East and Starbelly Sneetches and Plainbelly Sneetches is that they assign these things to babies that have no concept of it. It's so ridiculous. They'll talk about like it's on your ID card, your religion. Your religion is on your ID card. Like, how can you even have a religion? You're a baby. You know, so it's like it's even worse than like having a race-based rights system because it's just like based on nothing. It's based on nothing. You're like, well, you're going to teach them that. Oh, so you're going to put them into a system of unequal rights, and therefore it's okay to have a system of unequal rights. Like, it's just so fucking weird. Fucking Sneetches, man. Um, where woods and glass candles function like a microphone, acoustical energy gets converted into electrical signal through a transducer that can be stored as information, and then they switch the sound for a soul. Oh. I
Preston
mean, I
saying,
get it.
"Oh, is very
No, I
polite."
mean,
I
I
would say,
get it.
"What the fuck?"
I understand all of that. Um, uh, the I think I think that, by the way, is a very clever um way of like describing uh like a possible transformation of like of human consciousness into something more like sciency. I do. Um I don't know if George R. Martin's ever thought of that. Like, I think this is very clever, and that you should probably write your own sci-fi novel based on this idea. Um, I think George R. Martin thinks more like consciousness is a hard drive, like things being because he's talked about like things being etched into crystals with lasers, like ones and zeros. So I think he thinks about it more like a hard drive, but the way you're describing it is fascinating. Um, like converting the actual like electronics into like beats of a wave on a wave function. It's it, Yeah, I don't know if George did that though. I mean, I just have never read anything that where he's got into something like so complicated and like, but at the same time, like, kind of makes sense. Um, but yeah, you should probably write your own sci-fi book based on this idea. um, so are we as Americans supposed to support Israel or Palestine? I'm confused. I don't know who I'm supposed to support. You're supposed to support innocent, regular people, and you're supposed to hate the stupid governments, man. Middle Eastern governments are really dumb. And I'm saying like American government is dumb. Like we're really dumb. The American government's dumb. But at the same time, like even you take the most like even if you took I don't know about Marjorie Taylor Greene, but say you took like generally speaking the Republican Party or even Trump, and you said like would you ever do something as dumb as what the Middle Eastern governments are doing right now? Like would a 10-year-old child make those decisions and think they work? Right? Like think about what's being done. Do you think that's going to work? Do you think do you think a terrorist attack where you kill like 1,400 people, including a bunch of kids, you think that's gonna work? You think you're gonna get your ends? You think you're gonna look good? You think like bombing hospitals and like pushing like 1 million people like and just like indiscriminately like just bombing shit, like do you think that's gonna fucking work? Do you think that's gonna make the problem go away? Like it's so dumb. They're so dumb. Like Middle Eastern governments are so dumb. I feel so bad for the people. The people are innocent. Like, as I said, like innocent children. Innocent children. People, a lot of people know how dumb they are, but just like, and these governments are so dumb. Like they make Jim Jordan look like a fucking genius. Like, oh my God, like, why would you think that would work? Why would you think like building settlements on other people's lands and like forcing them into smaller areas would work? Why do you think that like blowing yourself up and killing kids, killing pregnant women, killing children, like why do you think like that would work? They're so dumb. It's astounding how dumb Middle Eastern governments are. All of them. I only care about the people. My side, you're supposed to support the innocent people, and the governments are all fucking idiots. Oh, somebody asked about the Druze. The Druze, Druze. Druze is a whole nother religion. They exist in northern Israel, northern Jordan, southern Syria. They're a lot of them are, it's actually a secret mystical religion where they can't talk about what they believe, and a lot of them pose as Muslims and then like secretly are Druze behind closed doors. They're crazy. Yeah. But man, it's just um no easy answer. No, the answer is easy. The answer is the answer is equal rights, secular governance. Like this isn't a problem in the rest of the fucking world. Like the rest of the fucking world like has equal rights. like or tries to. Like do you think it'll ever work? Do you think you're like, "Oh, geez, I've got this system where two people have different sets of rights and I treat one well and the other not so well. Why isn't it working? Why isn't this fucking working? Like, it's so fucking dumb. It's like it's honestly a 10-year-old. A 10-year-old can see this, can see how dumb Middle Eastern governments are. Like, huh? Why? I don't understand. I have a state for the Starbelly Sneeches, and the Starbelly Sneeches have one set of rights, and the Plain Belly Sneeches, well, they don't have as many rights, or rights at all. Huh? And yet there keeps being problems. I can't figure it out. What the fuck is the problem? God, they're so dumb. So fucking dumb. The solution is easy. Equal rights, secular governance. That's it. And when I say secular governance, like, it's kind of redundant with equal rights. You can't have, if you have a religious state, you're not going to have equal rights, you know, like, because every religious minority is going to be persecuted, right? Like, you have to, like you have to have secular governance to have equal rights, but it's just equal rights, equal rights, equal rights. Like, how fucking hard is that? Apparently. Queen Norn, we're talking about Queen Rania. Queen Rania is Palestinian. The beautiful, beautiful Queen Rania. How is Iran involved? It's hard to say. There's a lot of conspiracy theories right now. Obviously, Iran has supported Hamas in the past, but we aren't sure if Iran actually knew about this particular terrorist attack. So I'm sure Iran is right now like, fuck, we don't want to, we don't want any, you know, so. Are people complaining about polio? What's evidence of this? I'm just saying that, like, if you're rolling around in a wheelchair with polio and being like, why did I get polio? And I'm like, were you vaccinated? And you're like, no. And you're like, this isn't fucking hard. Like, get fucking vaccinated for polio and you won't get polio. Like, it's just, race is real. I mean, look, not real. I mean, I understand it's still an invented thing, but you could at least when you're talking about like black people and white people in America, for the most part, black people have darker skin than white people. I mean, we have like names for this kind of stuff, you know. But yes, race is. I mean, I understand that like all culture is constructed in people's heads, yes, but you know, there's. And I'm saying that there shouldn't be. Like, imagine in America, like they do ask like like occasionally for like physical descriptions on ID cards and stuff, but like your rights as a person in America are not dependent upon your race. Like, you can buy a house wherever you want in America if you have the money. No one is going to stop you based on being black or white. You're not classified, legally speaking, as a black or a white person. You don't have separate rights. Your education in school is not different. You can marry whoever you want. In the Middle East, you cannot do that. You cannot marry who you want. You cannot, you are given a different education system, a different legal system. You have a different abilities to buy and lease and rent land in different places based on something you were assigned at birth. Like, this is how fucked up it is. Like, it's even more fucked up than race, because at least like race, like that's you know, some people do have more melanin in their skin than others. Like, that's an actual real thing. Like, everything else, this is all, it's just nothing. It's just like, it's so dumb. It's so dumb. It should be really, it's like, I feel really bad for people in the Middle East, because when they go places and they're like, and they like try to tell people how great their country is, everybody else is like, oh my God, like, no, like, it's embarrassing. Like, it must be so embarrassing to be from a country with like such like abuses in like, without a lack of equal rights that's like run religiously. Like, isn't that embarrassing to talk to people? Like, and they just are like, oh God, oh, how embarrassing. It's like when you know, I don't know if you've ever been in a group of people and like, if you've ever been in a group of people and a Chinese person is like, oh, you know, Taiwan's part of China, and everyone's like, oh God, like, how fucking embarrassing. How embarrassing that you were raised in that system and they polluted they polluted your brain with that. Like, and there's so many things to be embarrassed for in America that it's just like, oh, and then you look at the Middle East and you're like, oh my God, you make America look so good. Like um I think you guys are conflating nationality and race. I don't know what nationality is. Like citizenship? Like, please define nationality. I mean, what's nationality? Like, we're just kind of like making stuff. Um, um, and the Sons of Soldiers will resume things in 15 years. Of course. Of course. Um, does Hamas believe the French Revolution was Jewish conspiracy to destroy Islam? Perhaps some. I mean, Hamas are idiots, man. They are so fucking dumb. Like, they are so fucking dumb. I mean, if they're the dumb, like Hamas is just, oh my god, they're dumb. Um, thank you. I appreciate the cultural historic contents. I always learn something new from your videos, i.e., treatment of Jews during the Spanish Inquisition. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, um, I mean, I appreciate that. That's actually a very nice thing to say. Um, but yeah. Jews in historical Spain and the Spanish Inquisition. It's a very interesting time. Very interesting time. A lot of Spanish cities. There's like old Jewish quarters. Same with like Morocco and stuff like that. The let's see. Does Bibi want last weekend to be his 9/11? So the one thing that I sort of see is kind of positive about, because when this happened, I immediately thought of like America after 9/11 and how and keep in mind that like America was dumb after 9/11. We were dumb. We went into Afghanistan and then we went into Iraq, which was super dumb, and we completely reorganized our government and created the Department of Homeland Security and created TSA and all sorts of stuff. Like it's huge, like structural um, thing with our government. Like so much money wasted, so much happened. Um, and now we got to picture this is a government that's even dumber. Like this is like, oh my god, that's like 10 times dumber than America. What are they going to do? Well, we're seeing it. Okay, just dumb. But I was fearful that because after 9/11, support for Bush went up to like 91%. Everyone's like, oh my god, Bush is doing such a great job. And my only positive thing I see about all of this is that all of a sudden like support for Netanyahu has like dropped, and hopefully something will come of that. But I wouldn't hold my breath because man, people are just dies. You can buy a house wherever you want, kind of. So what I'm referring to is in the land of Starbelly Sneeches, there is a fund that owns a large percentage of the land in the country, and you can only lease and buy it if you are a Starbelly Sneech. So even if you're a plain belly Sneech that has citizenship in the land of Starbelly Sneeches, you can't get anything from this. So. But in America, we can you can buy a house wherever you want as long as you have money. But what has skin color got to do with race? I mean, it has to do with race in the sense that people look at your skin color and they assume your race by it. I mean, I get it. Like, I understand that, like somebody comes from Ghana straight off yesterday from, and he's very different than a black American. He's not descended from slaves, and there's a big cultural difference between somebody that's descended from slaves and someone who just came from Africa, huge difference, however, when you see somebody from afar, you at least like look at him and go, oh, that guy's black. It's just a very obvious like marker that makes people like assume these things. Of course, there's secondary things. There's accent. There's way people dress. There's way people walk. You know, all sorts of things that like that lead into the culture of you know Black American culture. You know, in fact, I would say that like having a Black American accent is probably something that people discriminate against you more than even your skin color. That if you go into a job interview and you speak like a Black American, that's going to hurt you more than having more melanin in your skin and having African features, you know. But so much so that like, I mean, I'll get into like the accent things, but so much so that like, you know, people actually believe that the way Black Americans speak is incorrect in America. So, but oh yeah, in America, the incarceration and poverty rates speak for themselves. Oh yeah, America's a fucking mess. America's a huge mess. First to admit, America's a huge mess. But man, compared to the Middle East, we got it together. We got it together. Um, there's a the application with black and white names is it's a very interesting uh study, because what they found is what happened. I want to say that names um oh, this was it. Having a black name does hurt you compared to having a white name. However, it doesn't hurt you more than being black versus white already. So like it's a cue that you're black, but so say you give a black person a white name, they're more likely to get that job interview. But then once they get the job interview, they're not hired. So in a sense, like, does your name matter? Yeah, it cues people beforehand that you are of what your race is, but people are eventually going to see your race anyway. But there's a woman who studies this. Her name is literally uh, um, Marijuana Pepsi. Marijuana Pepsi. Um, yeah, Marijuana Pepsi Van Dyke. And she's a researcher who studies this. Her mother named her Marijuana Pepsi, and so and she went on to become an academic and studies like the importance of names on people's lives, because she was obviously cursed with the name Marijuana Pepsi. And keep in mind that like her siblings have normal names. That's what's so fucked up. And it's and so and when people like teachers would be like, oh, her name's Marijuana, can I start calling her Mary? And like her mom like comes into school and is like, no, her name's Marijuana, you call her by your name, her name is Marijuana. But yeah, Marijuana Pepsi Van Dyke is her name. Or Marijuana Pepsi Jackson Van Dyke. She was originally Marijuana Pepsi. She married someone named Van Dyke, so she's Marijuana Pepsi Van Dyke. Marijuana Pepsi Jackson Van Dyke. Fascinating woman. I've heard her speak and heard her talk about her research. She's amazing. She's amazing. Like, having gone through life. I mean, she's like in her 50s now, but like Marijuana Pepsi, man. Wow. Thank you for your content and insights, Preston. You helped me more than you know. Thank you. Thank you so much. Middle East legal racism, USA structural racism. Yeah, that's kind of the way to, you know, racism isn't quite the right word in the Middle East because it's not really race. Like, Palestinians and Israelis look the same, which is why even my joke about star belly sneeches and plain belly sneeches, like you can look and see differences, but like Palestinians and Israelis look very much the same. But it's there's something else. Like you're inventing these classifications, these almost arbitrary classifications, and projecting them on babies. And keep in mind that like when we talk about like Gaza, one half of Gaza are children. Okay, 2 million people, 1 million children, children, no concept of God, like all of these things, and yet people are like, oh well, we've got to we've got to do this based on the actions of Hamas, like who are terrorist extremists, um, what how is there a connection? Oh well, we've classified them as that. Oh okay, like you can be an atheist. You can be an atheist in Israel, but then you're classified as Jewish. Like, but I don't believe in God. No, you're still Jewish. Like how? How? It's a very kind of insulting thing. Like right, like the beliefs like which fairies your ancestors believed in like is now like classification of what you are. For and how many rights you're gonna have. Like it's because also keep in mind the Abrahamic religions are all really dumb. Like I'm not, it's just like they're dumb. Like not only are the Abrahamic
How
religions
dare you?
dumb, but the Middle Eastern governments are dumb. Like oh,
How dare you, Preston? How dare you
I
say these
know,
things?
I know.
To touch on the thing that about the names, how
Mm,
your name can impact whether or not you get a job. There's this YouTuber called DJ Vlad. He's this guy that does a lot of interviews with people in the black community, rappers, comedians, so on and so forth, actors. Um, you guys look up this interview he did with a man by the name of Warren Snap on giving his kid non-ethnic names for
mm,
job applications. A very interesting clip. Warren, of course, is a black man, and it's a very interesting clip on what he has to say about that. Because as
yeah.
someone with, because for those of you who don't know, Carmine is not my real name. I have somewhat of a Latin name, kinda. And have I faced discrimination
I mean,
before?
your real name is Skip, isn't it? Isn't
I
it Skip? Skip.
thought you were gonna say the fucking thing.
No, you
I
thought you were
thought you
going
were
to
gonna
say your
say
real name? No, 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 no.
thought you're gonna dude, the thing that I've learned about you is that you government agents have no fucking chill when it comes to secrets. So I just like I'm
Sure,
just always
sure.
like ah!
Skip, skip. Um, the thoughts on Hassan Piker. Um, I mean, I agree with like what Hassan Piker says on like a lot of issues, most issues. I think he's generally a very positive influence. I mean, granted, he's to the left of me, but like, I think he's a very positive influence because there is a million 12-year-old boys who are looking to Hassan Piker as their role model, and I don't think he's a bad role model. I don't. I think he's he gives people a lot of good intellectual food for thought, a lot of world knowledge and things like that. Like I so this is the same with my feelings on Vosh or Destiny or things like that. Like for the most part, like I don't agree with everything they say, but like for the most part, like 95% of what they're saying is like right on. And so I don't mind that like there's a whole bunch of people looking up to them. I'd rather have them looking up to them than Andrew Tate or Ben Shapiro or whatever. Um so yeah, it's I mean obviously like Hassan Piker for instance, I disagree with Hassan on Ukraine stuff, but um he's also more of he's an actual like socialist communist. I am not. I'm a liberal, but but on nearly everything else, we pretty much agree. So, um,
I don't know. I feel like this is great though. Like your take on Hassan. Finally, something you and I can disagree on. Because I think Hassan is a complete dumbass. Holy fuck, I hate Hassan. Like I'll take Vosh over Hassan any day, and that's a bitter pill to swallow to even say that.
I mean,
Because fuck, Hassan's just a
I mean,
tanky at this
Vosh is
point.
clearly a smarter guy. Um, however, Um, Hassan has more influence, and he taps into something different. So I will admit, as much as I joke about like masculinity being this like stupid, irrelevant pursuit that like some men are focused on, some like all the Joe Rogan fans are very focused on like being a man, being a man. Hassan taps into that a bit. Like they look at Hassan and they're like, "That's a man." That's a
Honestly, you
masculine
just
feature.
opened up a great way of describing Hassan to me. Hassan is essentially Joe Rogan for tangies. That's
Mm-hmm.
essentially what I kind of see him as.
Yeah,
He's just, mm.
yeah. I mean, he's smarter than Joe Rogan. Let's be honest. But like, like he's more worldly. He has a lot more knowledge about politics than Joe Rogan. He's not so into conspiracy theories, but you are right that I think his appeal, it's in the same wheelhouse of appeal that people are looking for. People are looking for a daddy, a masculine daddy to like look up to tell them how to live. You know. Um, yeah, yeah. Um, does anyone nap in A Song of Ice and Fire? How often do you nap? I never nap. Um, it's just never. I've never been a person that's been only if I'm like extremely jet lagged or something, or if I had stayed up the entire night or something. Am I gonna nap? It's not something that's part of like my circadian rhythm. So my circadian rhythm, generally speaking, is I'm very tired in the morning. Um, I get very little done in the morning, and then afternoon I am very productive, and then I'm kind of a night owl and I have trouble falling to sleep. And that's always been my case, my entire life. And it doesn't matter how much sleep or how little sleep or how much sleep I get; it's the same. I just know I am a late riser, night owl. Like that's my built-in circadian rhythm. Um, and I'm not a napper. Like I can try to take a nap, and I'm just not going to nap. I'm just not going to fall asleep. So do people nap in A Song of Ice and Fire? I'm trying to think like um I mean, obviously Hoster Tully was going in and out of naps. I want to say like there are definitely periods where people fall asleep briefly, right? Like Jamie on a stump or Catalin with losing time with her dad. But yeah, generally, I guess I don't hear about them going to take a nap in a regular bed. There's a lot of things that you don't even notice in A Song of Ice and Fire until they're pointed out. Like, no one in the entire world smokes. Did you know that, Carmine?
All of Ice and Fire, nobody smokes? I'm pretty sure someone
Nope.
does. Hmm.
Nope. Not a single smoker in the entire world or any culture. No smoking in Bravos. No smoking in Westeros. No smoking in the Dothraki. No smoking in Karth. No smoking in Marine. No smoking. There is not a single smoker in the entire world. It's crazy, right? Like, how is nobody smoking anything? Like,
This is how Tolkien finally overtakes George R. R. Martin. Is
well, I
everyone
think it
in
was
Tolkien
almost
smokes?
I think George R. R. Martin was doing it as like almost like a rebellion against that, right? Because Gandalf smokes, right? But that nobody in
No
Ice and Fire
way.
smokes.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, there's not a single case.
I'm gonna look this up later. I can't believe that.
um, Jewish is both a race and religion, isn't it? That's the isn't it? Well, here's the thing: is like all culture is imagined. Okay, we all have differences, and differences that you culturally identify with become 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 culture. So, like for instance, I like broccoli. You might not like broccoli. However, I don't identify as a broccoli eater. It's not like I there's a part of town that's a broccoli eating part of town and a language where broccoli eaters eat. And um I'm not discriminated against because I eat broccoli, and I don't seek out and I really want to marry a girl who's a broccoli eater. And it's not like I'm gonna have kids and be like, you need to eat broccoli to be like me because we have this tradition of broccoli eating. So there's differences, and then there's identity, and that's all. They're all the difference. I mean, the difference between, like, there's no green eye parts of town, but there's black parts of town. There's no red hair parts of town, but there's Asian parts of town. So it's all about what you create. So now the word race, now Jewish and Arab, and these like very nebulous terms, because again, like, what is Arab? I speak Arabic. Am I an Arab? Well, no, you're not an Arab. Or I know people who have, like, both of their parents are Egyptian, but they don't speak Arabic. Are they Arab? Like, well, what does it mean? What does it mean to be Arab then? Arabic it's a cultural thing based on, like Carmine talks about how he's shit at Portuguese, but he's still Latino.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand.
Latino, like, under protest.
Right, but these definitions don't really make sense once we examine them. So, like, what does it mean to be Jewish? How do we define it? Like, I mean, sure, if you've like sat there and you sit down and you've read the Torah and you're like, yes, Abraham really, as a 150-year-old man, really did bring Isaac up a mountain and try to sacrifice him, and then yeah, Noah really did get on an ark, and we're the chosen people, and there's totally gonna be a Messiah and all, Lot's cave, all this shit happened, Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm on board. Yeah, I could see, like, okay, you're Jewish, you believe in the religion of Judaism, but beyond that, like, what does it mean? Like, oh, well, my parents, like, celebrate Passover every year, and I go to a Passover dinner. Okay. Like, my last name is Cohen, so people think I'm Jewish. Oh, okay. Like, these little things, like, my last name is Jacobs. That's a Jewish last name, but I'm not Jewish. Like, what does it mean? And that's very different from race, like, race, you can, like, look at somebody and tell. I mean, not if you're passing one way or the other, but, like, it's just this, like, nebulous thing. Like, it doesn't really exist. And people are killing each other over something that doesn't exist. It doesn't fucking exist. Like, it's like, what is it? Like, this idea that, like, people are like, oh, well, my mom's Jewish, so technically I'm Jewish. Like, how does that make sense? How does that make sense in any way? Like, because some other people believe that if I'm born Jewish, I'm Jewish. Like, you're not that. Like, it's all just imagined. It's so stupid. It's so stupid once you examine and be like, oh yeah, all of this makes no sense, and people are dying. Over what? Over nothing. Over absolutely nothing. Deep. A lot of hate and love for Hassan and Bashir. Yeah, Hassan used to be on the Young Turks. His uncle is Chunk Uyghur, who, like, runs TYT. So they Hassan grew up in first part of his life. He grew up in Turkey, but he's a U.S. citizen now. But I watched TYT when Hassan was regular. Then I feel like I agreed more with Hassan at the time than now. He, everybody changes over time. The world's changed quite a bit, right? And what people talk about. Real men look up to Sam Cedar. I agree. Sam Cedar, it does have the better opinions. Sam Cedar usually has the most correct opinions. And I also like, my views are probably the closest to David Pakman. But Sam Cedar is very intelligent, and like he sits down and like makes an argument. I'm just like, oh fuck, that's such a fucking good argument. You know, but it's true. Sam Cedar is probably the but he strikes me as a napper. Yeah, that's probably true too.
And
The
Cedar will
rest,
always have praise in the leftist community for making Steven Crowder run like a little bitch.
that's
Like
true.
that was chef's kiss.
Yeah, tobacco doesn't exist. I mean, it's true that tobacco is a big part, but people smoke things other than tobacco in the world, you know. But there's nothing other than uh, um, there's nothing that people smoke anywhere in the world, which is kind of funny. All the smokers moved to Middle Earth. Bran napped after his fall. This is some good. Smoking was unknown in Europe before the New World. You know, and that's I do wonder about that because they must have smoked some sort of like herbal grass or you know, like it must have been done. It's just that smoking is so. Let me look up where does marijuana even come from? See, marijuana was used in Central Asia because I'm trying to think like there's other things that people smoke. Obviously, like people smoke poppy. They have poppy, but you don't hear about anyone smoking poppy. You know, there's no one smoking cannabis. Um, there's other things that smoking strange grasses. Yeah, tobacco isn't here because tobacco's American, but like there has to be other things that people smoke. You know, um, yeah, cannabis, marijuana was common in Europe, Eurasia. So there's and opium, though maybe opium hadn't made it to Europe yet, but you'd think that like even in the travels to Carth or something, you'd come by some sort of smoker. But yeah, there's just no smoking, no smoking. Jorah's got to be would be a smoker. It's true. He'd just be like, my ex-wife.
I refuse. I refuse to believe. I refuse to believe that there's. I looked it up here. Apparently, people do chew something, and there's references to Marwyn and Arya doing it, but I can't really
Well, that's
find
sour
it.
leaf. So people chew a lot of things, and
Hmm.
and there are like incense in different places, you know, and stuff like that. But there's certainly drug use, but there's no specific like um, smoking smoking use. Um, oh, by the way, I got the idea for my audio textbook. I'm a freelance film and song recordist, and it's immensely fascinated by the science behind sound equipment. Yeah, no, I mean it's this is about he should start his own uh, view of he start his own his sci-fi series based on like consciousness being able to be transferred within wave functions within waves, because you could take something like, and I've never seen this done, but you could take this as like extraterrestrial, like say you start something where like SETI is like detecting like waves, and they finally get like some radio waves, and then it turns out and they like collect this radio wave, and then that radio wave ends up being like an alien consciousness, and that alien consciousness starts like infecting things. Like I don't know if that's ever been done, you know. But the idea that like if human consciousness could be transferred into a wave, you could shoot the waves through space, um, and that would be your form of extraterrestrial travel. You could get everywhere by the speed of light by transmitting your consciousness in a wave. I mean, that's a cool idea, actually. Um, like imagine like Earth's sun is supernovaing, and they send out, it's going to super. Everybody knows that Earth's sun is going to supernova in 500 years. So they send out like robots to a far off world, and they land and they construct a receiver, and they receive people's human consciousness sent over out of through space in a receiver, and then they start reconstructing bodies on a new planet. um there's a lot you could do with it. Fuck, man, we've talked ourselves into the best new sci-fi series. Yeah.
Ideas for the fanfic.
Yeah, I know. Arab is coming from a region and Jewish is a religion. Um, Not really. So like Arabian is coming from the Arabian Peninsula, but Arab um is referring to the linguistic family of languages coming from originally the Arabic language that came from the Arabian Peninsula. So yeah, I understand what you're saying, that it was originally like regional, but this, I mean, the same comes from Jewish though. Like Jewish comes from Judea probably. So you've got Judea being a region. I mean, which you know eventually becomes the Jewish people. And then they speak some sort of Hebrew that eventually evolves and changes into different languages, and so you get Yiddish and stuff. And then they reinvented modern Hebrew as people went back, which is, um, but but yeah, you get these weird things, and keep in mind these sorts of like region, ethnicity, race things like exist in other places and they don't make sense. Like obviously like in America we say Asian, and what we mean by that is we mean like East Asian, and and it's not really a region because in East Asia there are people that are not East Asian looking. There are white people in East Asia. They're like Uyghurs and the people in northern Japan, the indigenous group from the the northern Japanese indigenous group. What am I thinking of? Uh, they're called the Ainu, and like Russian. You've got all sorts of different like ethnic, races, for lack of a better word. But we use East Asian, and now like you have an East Asian in America who's been born there, but they're still East Asian, and we're making some sort of racial like statement, but we don't, it's regional based. But like Jewish was regional based. I mean, it was based on Judea, I think. Um, I imagine. Does Jew come from Judea? Yeah, or the kingdom of Judah, from Judah. Um, so yeah, but it's not really even a religion anymore, right? Because there's so many atheists. So like, what is it? I mean, it's essentially like all of these and none of these things, like all above, like to say these words. I mean, by the way, there are plenty of Arab Jews. So like to have like the to have like Arab and Jew be like two opposing things also doesn't even make sense. One's based on a linguistic language family, and one's kind of based on religion, and then you're putting them opposed to each other. But then there were Arab Jews, so but they'll tend to call themselves something else. They're like, oh, I was a Moroccan Jew, or I was a Yemeni Jew, I was an Eastern Jew, like. But sometimes they'll say Persian Jew. I mean, from the ones from Iran, but there were by the way, there were Palestinian Jews. I mean, they were given Israeli citizenship, and many of them have kind of disappeared, but there were Palestinian Jews. I mean, um, That's not how Judaism works. Not at all. Jewish people have told me. Jews disagree on what makes Jewishness. By the way, um, depending on if you're a Reformed versus yeah, a conservative or Hasidic or whatever, it's you have different things. So, for instance, if you're a Reformed Jew, you don't even have to have a mother that's Jewish. It's just if you identify as being Jewish, you're Jewish under Reformed Jewishness. So they disagree on what is it. So um, that's the thing is like what is ethnicity even? Um, Chunk isn't it pronounced Chunk Uyghur? I know it's spelled CENK, but I think it's pronounced Chunk. And everybody's like Chunk Uyghur. I think isn't it? I don't know. People are making fun of me for the pronunciation of Chunk.
If it makes you feel better, I always make fun of you for your pronunciation of Varys.
You are looking at Julian's pronunciation guide, where we look at how to pronounce better some of the most mispronounced words in the world, like this other curious word. But how do you say what you're looking for today? Turkish name pronunciation: male, masculine. Given name of boys meaning battle.
Shut the fuck up.
Turkish pronunciation: Cenk.
Cenk.
Cenk. Here are more videos.
Or maybe it's like a CH and J together. Cenk. Cenk. Instead of chunk. Cenk. Whatever. Whatever. Cenk. Oh my god, that guy's YouTube channel is horrible. Fuck that guy. um Scott Galloway. This is I've got a super chat on Scott Galloway. I'm not sure. I don't know much about him. He's a professor, marketing for New York University School of Business, public speaker, author, podcast host, entrepreneur. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what his big beliefs are. He says that um, has books called No Mercy, things like that. Yeah, I don't know much about him. Um, or if he's follow your passion. He seems to be a motivational speaker of some sort. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I don't know much about him. Thoughts on him. Okay. Uh, let's see here. I think the Romans smoked marijuana. I'm sure they smoked something, right? Um, Poppy plant, cannabis, evolved all over the world. Hash was definitely a thing. Sour leaf, you can smoke heroin. Yes, yes. Man, we're still in this no smoking in
I can't believe that's just an insane revelation. Did you come across this while you're doing the fanfic?
No. I kind of knew it for a while, but I knew it. I've been told before, but I thought about it a bit because I was working on the Quentin chapter, and it's like, well, he's in this Middle East stand-in. Would he be smoking opium to deal with pain? And it's like, oh, or using a hookah, and it came back to me, and I was like, oh right, there's no smoking um, in the story. So if he's using a painkiller, it's not going to be smoking opium. It's going to be taking milk of the poppy or whatever. In a
Hmm.
different way. But yeah, it's Um, Betel nut is chewed as a stimulant. Betel nut is fucking crazy. That's so here in Taiwan. There's and Southeast Asia. There's this nut that they chew. The truckers chew called betel nut, and it just like makes your whole mouth tingle, and then your saliva mixes with it, and it looks like blood. It just starts flowing out of your mouth like blood. But the truckers use it, and it's a very competitive industry, so there's no reason to like go to one shop over another. The betel nut's all the same price. So what they do is they put the most attractive woman they have, which available, which often she's not that attractive, and they put her in really skimpy outfit and makeup, and they put her in a glass box at the side of the road, and so the trucker like sees the sexy girl chopping up betel nut and buys the betel nut from her. But there's these betel nut girls at the side of the road in Taiwan. It's really fucking weird. Like, why is there this like woman dressed up like a hooker in a glass box chopping betel nut? Fucking weird stuff. For the fanfic, the Ironborn should know of some smokable plant from overseas. Asha seems like a smoker. I guess they could bring it in. But the thing is like Euron is the one that's gone the furthest, right? He's the one person that should have it, but he's just drinking the shade of the evening. George R. Martin was smoking when he came up with the Essos places. Yeah, it's probably true. Kind of funny. The pyramids are a bong. Thank you, Golden Kaimu, for teaching me about that I knew. Yeah. There's a lot of weird, really weird people all over the place. There's a funny uh, Community episode where they meet Chevy Chase's dad, and he's a super racist. And she's like Britta decides that he's not going to be racist against her, so she tells him that her ancestry is Swedish, and he goes into this very specific thing, and he's like, with all of your interbreeding with the Laplanders, like you might as well call yourself a Finn. And you're like, oh god. Because northern Sweden, they're these people, the Laplanders. Preston's probably thinking chunk because of transliteration of Chinese feng. No, I was just thinking I'd heard him say his name before, and it's chung instead of chunk, or chenk instead of chunk, but it's still a cha. It's still a cha cha sound together kind of thing. Did George ever smoke? I've never seen him smoking cigarettes, but he talks about, I mean, it seems like he would definitely smoke some weed. But it's not, he's certainly not famous like Stephen King was such a famous smoker. But it's hard to say. In the 60s and 70s, did everybody smoke? So maybe. I don't think. I've seen pictures of him smoking pipes, George R. Martin, but kind of as a funny joke thing. I've never seen him like smoking cigarettes. But you and I smoked pot. There's some story about somebody smoking pot with George R. Martin. But you and I smoked pot with George R. Martin. What? Let me see here. No, this was clickbait. Oh well. The I hear betel nut is horrible for your mouth. Almost anything, any stimulant that you're putting in your mouth is horrible for it. I mean, in Scandinavia, they have this thing snooze, which is actually now illegal in I'm forgetting which ones are illegal, and then people like have to like smuggle them across. But snooze like was horrible for teeth, just like chewing tobacco was horrible for teeth. And um, but yeah, betel nuts just it stains people's teeth red. It's horrible. It's horrible stuff. People look like death if they've used it for too long. Garth Greenhand brought weed to Westeros. Maybe. Let's see. Um, Valerius smoking C's. He definitely did shrooms and LSD. Probably. He's written about it enough. I was also inspired by your Bran time travel series on how consciousness time travel could work when George R. R. Martin didn't provide any useful explanation. Yeah, I mean, George. I mean, I'm just kind of basing things off of like how George like wrote about consciousness time travel in Under Siege or in Unsound Variations and stuff. But obviously, it doesn't really make sense because our memories are in our brain. And you can't bring all of that with your consciousness. If consciousness existed in a ghost form, it would be a blank slate, right? Because our memories are here. But nonetheless, he does it in a more of a TV sense that you could actually have mind swaps and stuff and blended consciousness. Someone going back in time, like with all of the memories somehow, which is a silly concept. But
Chaos Seed out here wasting all this time talking to you about this instead of making his own YouTube video. Homie,
I
this
know
is
he
a
should. Well,
great.
he should write his own book. But I guess it would be a lot of stuff to like get every memory because every memory has to be coded now on on a um, on a wave. I suppose it could be done. Um, you know, coding. I mean, in the same sense that you're coding a file. I mean, people talk about this a lot. Like, okay, if we send a probe to Alpha Centauri and then it communicates back, it's going to take the information flow is going to take 4 years. Well, you do the same if you could write human consciousness into ones and zeros, you could do the same thing and transfer a consciousness. Um, Imagine kissing a heavy betel nut user. Ugh, ugh. Well, ugh. Ugh. Should the U.S. be worried about China's growing influence in the Middle East? Have you thought about the possibility of Kuwait being Liana? Um, China does. I mean, China has a growing influence everywhere. Obviously, it's more focused on Africa than anywhere else. There is some growth of China in the Middle East. Um, I don't know. I don't know about the worry. Is sort of like what are we worried about? Like, are we like what's the West's goals and what are China's goals, and do they really conflict? Um, does besides taking over Taiwan, which I think would be a horrible thing, but besides taking over Taiwan, does China really have ambitions for global dominance? Are we worried about that in any sort of real sense?
Doesn't
Um,
every superpower?
do they?
I
I mean,
mean, yeah.
I mean, is America really like taking over more countries? I mean, we invade
Uh,
countries and like
cult.
remake them, but I'm talking like
I would I would argue
expanding territory.
culturally. If
You
you
know?
if you talk to any Australian, they will tell you how our bullshit has infected their shit. I'm
Hmm.
sure same with a lot of European countries as well. If there's any Europeans in the stream chat, specifically Australians, I would love for any Australian to like give me
Hmm.
their opinion on this because I know quite a few. Discord, by the way, my
Yeah.
adventures on Discord, I've met so many Australians. And the one thing that has been consistent is they don't like how American stupidity, specifically like the Republican stuff, is invading
Hmm.
their politics.
Oh yeah. I
Um,
mean,
so
I'm not saying that like America doesn't um, unintentionally export its culture, whether it be political or whether it be movies or clothing or whatever, fast food or whatever. It's not that, but you know, I don't think it's America's intention to assimilate the world. Like I don't think I don't think there's any conspiracy among Americans or the American government to make the rest of the world like America. There's some broad stuff, like there's some broad lip service that we'd like to increase democracy across the globe or something like that. Um, but for the most part, Americans just want to make money, right? They want to make money and they want to be richer in America, right? And so it's like, what are the imperialist ends of the United States? It's it's just make money. Like there's not very much interest in turning someone from Oman into an American, or turning making them speak English and making them eat hamburgers and I don't know if there's much interest in that. People just want to make money and make themselves richer, right?
sure, but you can't. But once again, this is something that you'd have to ask people from other countries. As an American yourself, I guess
Mm,
that'd be hard to see. But you travel a lot, so maybe you can see it. But
yeah,
someone from I don't know Oman or an African country where different culture than the United States could see the United States as bullshit encroaching on their own as kind of an
yeah.
invasion type of thing. In a
I mean,
sense, you
I
could
would say
argue
that the
that.
things the things that the American government focuses on is, yes, American government does try to get people to decrease trade barriers, and they do try to influence countries to have freer markets because they think all of this will increase the American economy, and they give lip service to advocating for democracy and human rights. I don't know how much the United States actually like pushes that, but I mean, there's those goals where like freer markets, lower trade barriers. Um, but when it comes to like assimilation to our way of life, I don't know if like people are that caught up in it. If they really care. But this is very different from say the way a proselytizing religious person exists, right? A proselytizing religious person wants you to believe the way they believe and open a church, temple, mosque like similar to them and spread and propagate themselves, right? I don't know if Americans are interested in propagating themselves. And I don't know if Chinese are interested in propagating themselves. When they go into Africa, they set up factories and they extract the resources, and then they try to make their money and they try to get the fuck out. Maybe they try to influence the government to be pro China, or like, but do they care if like the average person is like, um, you know, eating Chinese products? No, I don't think they do. Maybe consuming something that Chinese produce or something to make money. Um, but that's the thing is like, what is the fear? Like, what is the end state? Like, say China's influence grows in the Middle East or Africa. Like, what is the? I could see like, okay, like you have more countries that are willing to side with China over a potential dispute over Taiwan. Um, but the 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 threat is a lot lower than say when we were in a Cold War against the Soviet Union, where the Soviet Union was actively trying to make governments communist. I don't know if China is trying to do that. China's not trying to make governments communist. They're just trying to get governments to trade with China and side with China. Um, so I don't know. I don't know if there's really that much to fear. You know. Um, So, but have you thought about the possibility of Quaithe being Lyanna? People don't talk about that very much. Like, uh, is Lyanna, could a Lyanna be alive? Uh, Carmine, what do you think? Any chance Lyanna's alive?
You're asking the anti-theory guy about a
Yeah,
theory?
that's right.
No. Liana, doesn't Liana being alive kind of like ruin a couple of story beats? Specifically, the whole thing with Robert and all that. But I guess it also kind of makes it a little tragic. But at the same time, what's the point?
Would Ned? But I mean, Ned
Uh,
would have to think. I mean, Ned's like anxiety is so much about Lyanna's death. Like, had Lyanna been alive, doesn't that take away from a lot of like Ned's trauma?
right, and also wouldn't we know? Because if she did die, then he would probably be the one that would hide her away, and is the whole thing about that.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, I think it would have to be like somehow Ned didn't know she survived, but that would be really tough because no one else was at the tower, and it would be really hard for Leon to survive because it seems like Ned has some real trauma. But
Plus, the only people that would know she was alive would be Ned Stark and your favorite character of all time, Howland Reed.
yes, yes, of course, yeah. So somehow she's alive, and Helen Reed's like, oh, she died, dude, and then he like took her out the back door in the same way that like Miramad's door is like, your baby's dead. And Danny doesn't. Danny never sees the baby. She never sees Rhaego. So people are like, maybe Rhaego's alive. Like Howland Reed's like, sorry, Lyanna died. But no, he has her bones. He brought her bones back. Like he literally buried her bones in the crypts. He switched the bones. Like Howland Reed switched the bones. Americans come across as ignorant bigots mostly, not you guys, just people I see here and friends have said. I have two American housemates. They aren't bigots. So I mean, there's a lot of dumb Americans. Don't get me wrong. I mean,
There's also a lot of dumb Europeans.
a
But
lot of dumb
by the
people
way,
everywhere.
maybe you can attest to this because you travel quite a bit. Once again, I know quite a few European people, and
Mm,
the consistent thing I've heard with Europeans who live in like specifically Amsterdam, because
mm.
that's where everybody likes to go to get high. The one thing I've always heard is that the most insufferable tourists ever are British people, specifically British men.
So a lot of people. So a lot of it is like how people choose to travel. So, and what you see, and who's visible. Like, obviously, there's plenty of British travelers who are just being nice, respectful people. But I think people think about the British stag parties, which are a thing. So there's this huge economy of British guys going on these bachelor parties. They call them stag parties. In America, we call them bachelor parties, where they get on Ryanair or some cheap airline and they fly to Eastern Europe, and where Eastern Europe will have like super cheap strip clubs, super cheap casinos, super cheap beer, and these guys will like get matching T-shirts and they're all go and they'll have like their stag party and so they're when you go to Eastern Europe, you'll see this like big economic imprint of like casino strip club like tailoring specifically for these like British stag parties. But like for the most part, I don't know. Brits are like anybody else. Certain people do tend to have like trends in different ways. Like Australian backpackers tend to travel in big groups, while like other people's tend to like don't travel like in big groups. They travel solo. You'll see Dutch travelers alone. You know, Americans like to backpack in pairs or threes or something. I always travel alone, but Americans tend to backpack in twos or threes. Most people tend to backpack in twos or threes, but like Australians, it'll be like a pack of eight, and you're like, what? All of you came like backpack at the same time? Um, Italians like cruises and will go on like you'll see big cruise ships filled with Italians that arrive places and like overrun a city with Italians for like 3 days and then they're back on the ship and they go somewhere else. Russians like to go to their own specific Russian oriented colonies that exist in different places. So like where a Russian might vacation is going to be completely different than where anybody else will like for instance, did you know that Hurghada, Egypt is a huge beach town? Like you've never heard of it, Hurghada, Egypt,
No, I
but
have
like
not. I have not.
direct flights from like Russia to Hurghada. Hurghada, it's just like made for Russians, you know. So there's places like that exist that like cater to a certain like group. Like Sharm el Sheikh caters to Italians. So a lot gets into like where like tour groups and where tour companies advertise. So like when you go to a tour company, like when you go to an Expedia, like what's advertised, and that affects like where you choose to travel. And because it's like, oh, they market hotels, flights, tour groups, they all market to certain nationalities of who you know, what they can speak, you know, and where the flights go and stuff like that. So
To what C Bob is saying here. By the way, I'm going to speak a little low. I don't want to be too loud for the because a couple of people are saying I was loud. Apologies for that. To what C Bob was saying, you think you know ignorant bigot Americans. You don't, because they don't travel. Did I tell you about the time? Um, I met of course Trump voter. You know they're Trump voters because they had the MAGA hat. This one guy, I was at this like store, blah blah blah, and you know the topic of me, you know, speaking a different language came up, and this guy goes, "Where are you from?" I go, "Well, you know, Brazil," and he goes, "Oh man, I really love those tacos you guys invented."
I mean, he must have been fucking with you, no? Or is he serious?
No, there's no stop. You think these motherfuckers? You think these motherfuckers? No, the tacos you guys invented were great, like the
Yeah.
burritos and stuff. I'm like, well, that's why we brought them over because we knew you guys would like them. Just play into it. Just play into it.
Yeah, and this, I mean, this goes like all around. Like you can listen to hip hop songs about about, you know, they know me around the world, you know, like all of those, like they're hip hop songs that like beef up their egos, right? They're like, they know me in London, they know me in Paris, they know me in Tokyo, and then they'd be like, chop suey, karate chop, like kung fu, yeah, and you're like, oh god, like what are you doing? Like people are dumb. Like there's just so many people that are dumb that don't know the difference between
Oh,
like
real
it's
quick,
very crazy.
you I the problem is your mic. Can you turn your mic up a little bit on Ecamm?
Sure. Or
Just a
you want
tad
me to
bit.
go? Am I too quiet? I can turn it
Yeah,
up.
yeah. But you're fine. You're no, you are where you normally are, but
Okay, hold on a second. Did I?
your end,
I
just a
know.
little bit.
All right. On Ecamm it says I'm at 100%. I can turn up the gain on the back here.
Don't fuck with the gain. Do not, because that'll fuck with the podcast later.
Why don't I just move the mic a little bit closer? Okay, and we can have a little
That'll
intimate moment.
that'll fuck with the podcast later.
Be,
Like,
I know, but you could be one of those people that like, you know, there's like the Howard Stern, like I'm right here next to the microphone, and we're having a little intimate discussion here.
by the way, that completely random. People still, I don't know if you remember my videos from like 2015 when I would Baba Booey after the end of everything.
Mm.
People still Baba Booey at me. Like, guys, I haven't listened to Stern in fucking forever. Stern sucks. He's just terrible now.
Yeah. Um, the you guys gave us brand point of view. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome.
A lot of hard work,
It was, yes.
but I do appreciate it. A lot of people put in a lot of work.
We
You read
did.
about
We
it.
did.
I was losing sleep over it.
I did not.
Um, Syrians claim they invented tacos. Say they visited Mexico and didn't have flatbread, so they used cornmeal instead. It's always these funny things because people get this gets back to like ethnicity and culture and everything, and people start like getting really upset and personal about these things because like I say, like culture is really hard to define and impossible to define, and so when you have something that you think is like actually yours that helps define who you are, when somebody like takes that or appropriates it or something, you feel like it's been taken from you, you know. So and that like you're somehow less of your culture because somebody else started doing the same thing. And so you know, I know like the star belly sneeches and the plain belly sneeches, they get really upset about falafel and hummus and like which one, like who owns it and stuff. And once I went to Cyprus, and in Cyprus they eat halloumi cheese, which is very Syrian, and um, I was at this bed and breakfast with my girlfriend at the time, and they brought out halloumi cheese, and we're like, oh, halloumi, like in Syria, and the woman's like, they stole our cheese. The Muslims stole our cheese, and I'm like, ah, oh, Jesus, like the Muslims stole our cheese. That's the world. It's the world. How is the Stern thing Baba Booey? I think they probably did do Baba Booey before.
They
Baba
100%
Booey.
did. They did Baba Booey before I was even born. So
No, but
basically,
I think Baba Booey might be like a saying before Baba Booey.
No, it wasn't. So what happened was Stern's producer Gary Dell'Abate was saying how he was buying a bunch of like old school cartoon stuff, and he meant to say Baba Louie, but instead he said Baba Booey. The reason it persisted is because he said, "You guys are going to forget this joke tomorrow." Fast forward 40 years later, they're still doing it.
Huh. So no one. It just seems like I get it. I mean, I know who Baba Booey is and everybody. It almost seems like. But doesn't it seem like there was like a "ay Baba Booey," like an "ay caramba" kind of thing? I mean, apparently they yell Baba Booey on golf courses and stuff. But
They do. I fucking love it. It's the stupidest thing.
I mean, I have no proof of this, but doesn't it? It just feels like something that. I love this comment. Halloumi fucks. Halloumi is fucking great. Halloumi does fuck. Fucking great. Great. People have opinions on Welcome Back, Cotter. Welcome back. What's your opinion on the media and politicians bowing down to Israel so hard? In Europe, they outlawed pro-Palestine protests. Even what the fuck is happening? I think it has to do with like you don't get anything from the reverse. There's an Onion article actually that just came out.
I love it. It's great. Absolutely great.
Entitled, what was it? The Onion stands with Israel because it seems like you get in less trouble for that. Like, all right,
it's fucking great.
I think that's a big part of it, but obviously like it's also like the most recent thing. I think like if and when more innocent Gazans are like hurt and killed, like you might see a narrative change. But like right now, the big salient thing in people's minds is the terrorist attack and the hostages and things like that. And so that's going to be the first thing, and then later, when more Gazans die, and that will happen. I mean, let's be honest. Like we're gonna see tens of thousands, if not more, Gazans die. Like then we'll start seeing a narrative change. But I mean, I suppose it's the same with anything. Like after 9/11, like did anyone care about civilian Afghans or civilian Iraqis? I mean, eventually those stories kind of came out, but there's no upside like economically in a media sense. Like who's this huge, is there a huge pro-Palestinian market out there that you're trying, remember these are capitalist organizations, right? They're trying to appeal but to what people want to listen to. So it's there's no huge pro-Palestinian market, while Americans, I mean, keep in mind that like American like religious folk, these like evangelicals fucking love the pro-Israel narrative because they think it feeds into their like ideas about revelation and stuff like that, and Jesus is coming back. So I think it's
That's so weird.
There's that,
yeah. Because those evangelical guys are right wingers, but there's a lot of right wingers who don't even like Jews and think Jews have horns and tails and stuff. So that's always in conflict.
Jews are the mechanism to getting what they want. Like
Mm.
Jews are like doing are carrying the water to the Armageddon fight, which eventually leads to Jesus returning.
On the topic of Jesus returning, real quick, this halloumi cheese, like which one do you recommend? I'm trying to buy this online right now so I can try this.
Okay.
Dodani Authentic Cyprus. Is that okay?
Yeah, so the Cypress stuff is good. Cypress is very good at it, but the thing is, when you get it, you've got to fry it. You've got to grill it. You can't just
Oh,
eat
okay,
it like
I can
raw.
grill it.
You've
Yeah.
got to grill it.
Okay. Let me
Um,
send you a
it's a
picture of
very
what I'm
it's a
talking.
very rubbery, very flavorful cheese, and you know,
Let me send this to you on Facebook. Is this the one? It's the brand is called Dodani.
yeah.
So I want to get
I'm
the
sure if
right
they
one.
say if it says Cyprus, Lebanon, or Syria on it, you're gonna get some good cheese. You know, but that's the thing. Those are the three countries that are like like that live and die by halloumi. But um, oh, I'm from Pristina, Kosovo. Can you talk about Can you talk about your visit here, please? Um, Pristina. The you know uh so I did a trip once where let's see, did this trip I flew into Kosovo and then flew out of Albania. Um and Kosovo is very pretty. Keep in mind there's not too much to do in Pristina. So like they're very friendly people, but uh there's not exactly too much to see. I mean they're in Kotor or not Kotor. Is that Kotor the I'm trying to remember my Kosovo map now. The near the border has the pretty mosques next to like the mountains and stuff. Prizren, right? Prizren. But I flew into Pristina and then I went. We passed through I think Prizren, and then which was beautiful because you just tend not to see like these mosques in front of like green um, hills and snow-capped peaks and stuff like that. So Prizren was quite pretty. And then we went into Albania and had a great time in Albania. Albania is beautiful as well. Highly recommend going to the region. But um, yeah, it was nice. I mean, there's not too much to do there. Keep in mind that like I'd been to former Yugoslavia a bit, so like the food is kind of the same as all the other food. The people were quite friendly. A lot of them are like a lot of people stop me on the street and they're like, "Why are you here?" You know, like we went and we had we took our pictures next to the newborn sign. You can see the Clinton statue and go to the Bill Clinton street. But it's a nice, talk to people a bit. It was interesting though talking to people because Kosovar, I would say, I mean this is just a sample of who I talked to, but I was very interested in how many people saw themselves as Kosovar and how many people saw themselves as Albanians. And I think it was about a half and half split where some people are like, no, we're Kosovar, we're not Albanian, and then some people are like, no, we're basically the same. And that was an interesting thing to me because you do see a lot of Albanian flags for sale and things like that in Kosovo. But I mean, it wasn't too eventful. Me and my wife flew in. Saw some sights, had some food. Everyone was very friendly, but it was great. Um, um, when Israel bombs the hostages, don't we all know that's like gonna happen? It's so fearful. We're just like, oh god, how is that not gonna happen? It's just horrible, horrible. Um, um, Kotor. By the way, I was mixing it up with Montenegro, where Kotor is, and I'm sorry because I did a bunch of trips with my wife to different countries in former Yugoslavia when I was living in Frankfurt. a Slovenian airline that flies very cheaply to all of these places, and I'd never been to a lot of the countries. So in my time in Frankfurt, I did a trip to Slovenia, I did a trip to Serbia, I did a trip to Montenegro and Croatia, and I did a trip to Kosovo and Albania. Albania, obviously not part of former Yugoslavia, but in the same region, very, very similar culture, very similar food. And so the only one I didn't go to is I never got to Bosnia. I've never been to Bosnia, but everybody else, we went everywhere else. And I went to Macedonia. I went to Macedonia too. But Kotor was in Montenegro, but it's very beautiful, very, very wonderful place. I highly recommend everybody go to former Yugoslavia area and Albania. It's Albanian versus Serb, the next race war chapter. Yeah, it's a very touchy issue with Serbians, even Serbian Americans. You bring it up, but it's this is an interesting thing, an interesting issue to bring up, because when we talk about like when you talk about terrorism and antagonism of a power and overstepping what you do to like lose people. So anytime you do an action, a military action of some sort, and I'm throwing terrorism under these military actions too, but like if you go too far, you lose people. Like, people kind of know that there is a proportional reaction to an event, so you kind of go, okay, like the whole world kind of said, oh, America invaded Afghanistan after 9/11. There wasn't too much resistance to that because they saw it as like a proportional reaction, right? But if you go too far, if you go overboard, you lose people. Had America gone in and started like just slaughtering women and children in the streets, like things would have been a little different. But this is kind of the issue with Kosovo, Serbia, is that Kosovo, Serbia, that conflict began with kind of a small group of thugs like harassing Serbian police. And then the Serbian police went way too hard on the entire ethnic Albanian population. And the whole world was like, what the hell are you guys doing? And they lost the public opinion of the world. And in the end, like Kosovo's like cause became legitimized, and they are now an independent country. So like, and it's the same thing could happen with like Palestinians. Like if Israel oversteps and to a degree, like some people already believe they've overstepped, but if they go way too far, like you legitimize, like if you clamp down on someone too hard, you legitimize their cause. And so that's a fear when you, because Hamas is a horrible, horrible organization. But if you clamp down too hard and you start killing innocent civilians, all of a sudden you're kind of legitimizing their cause. And so, everyone has to be like, all actions have to be seen as, proportional and appropriate, which is why like Hamas like original terrorist attack was like ridiculous, right? Like no one's going to see that as, it's such a bad move. It was overkill, right? Like it's no one's going to see that as good. No one wants like, innocent kids getting gunned down. Like you're never going to win anybody over gunning down innocent kids. And so it's kind of the same thing with like any action. You have to like choose a appropriate response that's measured, that makes you look like that makes you look like reasonable. And you have to ask yourself, are any of these actions from these governments in the Middle East, like do any of them look proportional and appropriate? Do any of them look like they're going to work? You know, which is why I say that, you know, I side with the innocent. I side with the innocent.
That reminds me, you said something. You were it was a professor giving asking a question to his students, and he asked the question specifically about like the whole Palestinian Israel thing, and all the students gave like different responses, and he gave a third response that no one seemed to think of. What was? Do you remember telling the story?
Oh, are you talking? I know what you're talking about. There was a poll. This was when I was in graduate school, like 20 years ago. There was a poll in which they asked, like, in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which side do you sympathize with? The Palestinians, the Israelis, neither. And like, you know, it was Americans, so it was like 30% sympathized with the Israelis, like 5% sympathized with the Palestinians, and 65% sympathized with neither. You know, like, and his response to it was like, it's too bad they didn't ask my opinion, which was both. Like, I sympathize with both.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah. If some Jew born in Brooklyn has a right to a state in Palestine, then doesn't some Palestinian born in Jerusalem have the right to a state in Palestine? Um, I'm trying to make sense of this first. Um, oh, uh, I mean, I don't believe anyone has a birthright to any state. Okay, I think that people have the right to be treated equally by representative governments, and that there should be equal protection under the law in a secular system where there's a democratic process involved. That's what I'm for. Okay, so if you're asking me about, like, you know, do people, you know, does Israel have the right to exist? Does Palestine have the right to exist? I don't care. I don't care about either of those issues. I don't care about one state. I don't care about two states. I don't care about any of that. I don't believe in birthright. I don't believe in, but what I believe in is that people have the right to equal rights and good treatment from a government, democratic representation, and freedom of religion. Like, I believe in all of those things. And however you achieve that, you know, go for it. So, like, my problem with the region and with all Middle Eastern governments is that they promote religious states. And you will never have respect for a minority if there is a religious state. On top of this, with regards to the Sneetches, like, what are people under the Palestinian Authority or under Hamas? Like, what are they? Like, you know, they're in an they're are they occupied? Are they part of, is their land part of the country of Israel? And if they are, they deserve equal rights. If they're not in a part of the country of Israel, why aren't, after freaking 65 years, why hasn't Israel left? Like, it's just one of those two kind of things. Like, why isn't this the situation? As a white American, you can convert to Judaism and therefore move into a Palestinian's home. Yeah. That can happen. That can happen.
What?
It's true. So yeah. So what he's talking about is that the immigration policy for Israel, they allow in any Jew around the world to come to their country. Now, they might be a little picky, like, you know, if they might look at your background and be like, well, you have no Jewish background, your conversion to Judaism isn't real. They might say that, but nonetheless, say you prove to them that you're Jewish and you get Israeli citizenship. There's then land that's owned by a Jewish fund that only leases land to Jews, and some of that land that's owned is in the West Bank. And so you can be given a settlement you can be leased a settlement, kind of things there. So, yeah, I mean, there'd be a long bureaucratic process. Would you actually see that happen? I don't know, but that kind of stuff.
Don't give these kids these days any ideas,
Any
Preston, because
ideas?
rent prices out here are fucking ridiculous. Some people might take you up on that.
Yeah, I know, but it's but I look, this is these weird things, right? It's weird things where I have to be like, where you're in a situation where you say things like, I believe in equal rights. I believe that you should be able to marry whoever you want. I believe that you should be able to live in a land without religious governance, like a religious state, like inflicting, um, its beliefs upon you, and like live in religious freedom. Like it's weird that these are like controversial opinions. Like, how is this controversial? Like, I believe in equal rights. I believe in equal rights. Like, can we just like have that? Like, like, how is this like a crazy opinion? Um, but whatever. um, yeah, I mean, it's all screwed. It's the whole thing screwed up. If you come to the USA, don't go to Missouri. Instead, go to Tennessee. It's like this. It's like the same landscape, but with mountains and more tourism stuff. I mean, Tennessee is astoundingly beautiful state. So is Kentucky, especially the eastern part. Like, same with West Virginia. I mean, these are like these get the jokes as being like the most like, you know, these backwater yokels and stuff, but it's just like stunning, beautiful area. Like you can't deny that. You can't deny that. Meanwhile, like Missouri, you just think of being flat, right? Um. Da, 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 da.
To what Matt is saying right there under that guy, he says, in general, the U.S. gets progressively shittier the further from the ocean you go, right, Carmine? It gets funnier. Like I get for like someone who's not
Mm.
white passing, like that wouldn't be funny. But like the guy going like, yeah, you Brazilians brought over tacos, like that's just fucking hilarious. My roommate who was with me, she's like, is that would that offend you? Like no, no, that's fucking stupid and
Yeah,
hilarious
yeah.
at the same time.
Seeing the amount of Jews expelled from Europe and Arabia is scary. I mean, sure. I don't know. Like there's all these like things like um like again like I classify all these Middle Eastern countries the same. They're all shitty. Like they're all shitty. They're all shitty. Um, but man, but yeah, Tennessee and Kentucky are almost fantasy type beauty. It is true. Like it's almost like it's more like sometimes like a Chinese scroll. Like some of the mountains and the shapes of the mountains and the rivers and everything. It's almost like a Chinese scroll. Um, yeah, when I was in Israel, I was surprised to hear so many American accents. For a minute, I thought I was in Florida. There are a lot of Americans that go there. A lot of American tourists. A lot of people that go back and forth and live in both places. It's it's Colorado is beautiful. Look, I will say this about the United States. United States, the things it has going for it. I mean, besides everything compared to the Middle East, but like the things that America has going for it is its nature. It is if you go to America, and the thing is, I have a lot of Europeans that will like do a trip to America and they'll be like, I went to Chicago and it was boring, and I went to St. Louis and it was boring. And I was like, yeah, our cities suck. Okay, American cities suck. Like the people in the cities are awesome, but as a tourist, you're not gonna see that. America has really great nature, so in a sense, you've got like the worst people on the most beautiful land, and like the best people in like the boring cities. Like that's the paradox of America, you know. Like Kentucky and Tennessee are beautiful, like middle of nowhere. Montana, beautiful. Alaska, Wyoming, oh my god, like out of a dream. It's it's incredible. Most of America is stunning. It is. And if you go to America, go to the like do camping. Like that's what you should do. It's just, but you know, we've got the Grand Canyon, we've got mountains, we've got great skiing, we've got Devil's Canyon, we've got the Badlands, you know. It's so much. All of Alaska, Hawaii, California, beautiful stuff. It's just, you know, it's just the problem with America is it's filled with Americans, right?
Yeah, you're right. It's no, he's right. It's beautiful stuff, and then it gets ruined by some redneck calling you the N-word, even though you're not
Oh,
even
oh,
black.
absolutely,
Yeah, no,
absolutely.
I've been called the N-word before. I don't even know what I did. I just get out of here, you. And
Right. You do have to get, I do have to say, Mark, you've got to get away from the strip mall like highways. Like once you get away from the highways, like cuz man, those are ugly. But man. Cumberland. Cumberland, the most beautiful part of Maryland, which is Cumberland because it's West Virginia. um this is by the way, if we're looking at let's look at this map real quick. So this is Maryland. So Baltimore is in the middle. DC is pretty much right near Baltimore. They're counted pretty much as one metropolitan area on censuses and stuff. So this is where all the people live. Nonetheless, you got the Eastern Shore. Eastern Shore is filled with like farms. Everybody just passes, and rednecks. You pass through the Eastern Shore, which isn't that great, isn't that beautiful, to the beaches like Ocean City. But if you go in the other way to the other rednecks, because we got rednecks over here, and then we got rednecks over here. You go the other way, you get to this little neck area, Cumberland, and this is just stunningly beautiful area of Maryland. It's just driving through it is incredible. But it's yeah, go to old Maryland. Oh, Maryland. Did you know that? Oh, Carmine, did you know that the song Oh Christmas Tree is really Oh Maryland, Oh Maryland?
I did not know that. No.
Yes. Yes, it is. Oh Maryland My Maryland was the second most popular song during the Civil War after Dixie. Um, but it's just Oh Maryland, Oh Maryland.
I like what this guy. Excuse me, Preston. That's just your opinion. I'm sure you could find some classy girls hanging around strip malls.
Oh man. Do they have sausages there? No, I don't think so. Or at least I don't know about the weirdly because I've heard of the Cumberland sausages. I'm not sure where they come from, but yeah. Um uh let's see, good cities to visit as a tourist. New York City, Miami, Seattle, cool cities as a tourist. All those are pretty fun as tourists. Uh LA, Las Vegas, underwhelming. LA, LA, there's some fun in LA. LA is all about finding like the area of LA that like melds with you. Like, you know, you want to go to Manhattan Beach and chill out Manhattan Beach, you know, do that. You know, you want to go to Hollywood, chill out in Hollywood, you can do that. You know, finding your little place, you know. Um, Las Vegas is under, I mean, Las Vegas is going to a big mall. That's all you're doing. Is you're going to a big mall. It's a big mall in the desert. That's all it is. There's nothing with some shows and some gambling. You know, there's no. Um, who is this Mary person anyway? I think it was Queen Mary. Queen Mary. Um, Battle Hymn of the Republic is a banger. It's true though. It's really the original Battle Hymn of the Republic is quite a little religious zealot song. Um, so normally I'm a pretty I bash religion quite a bit, but like it was religious zealots during the Civil War who were the ones trying to free the slaves in the North. And so Battle Hymn of the Republic, which is it's a baller song, it is. But the final lines are like, he died to make men holy, let us die to make men free. Our truth is marching on. Right? And you're like, you think about those words a bit. You're like, oh shit. Like his truth is marching on. His truth, like Jesus's truth. He died to make men holy. Let us die to make men free. Comparing their own plight of like freeing slaves to Jesus getting crucified on the cross. Like, good times, good times, good times. It's so serious that they change the lyrics. Sometimes you'll hear, he died to make men holy, let us live to make men free. And I'm like, you fucking pussies. Like, just fucking keep the real lyrics, man. Keep those real lyrics. He lived to make men free. Fucking A. Oh man. Good song. America has no queen, needs no queen. Well, we've got Taylor Swift. Got Taylor Swift, right? Man, oh man. So Carmine, any last things that we want to discuss on this late Sunday night, beautiful Monday morning?
I don't think I have any other than announcement. We recorded Loki. I'm giving you that like later. I'm sure you want to upload that Monday. Are we doing Gen Z?
Yeah, if you'd like to.
Or not Gen Z? Fucking hate Gen Z. Gen V. I'm sorry, Gen V. You want to discuss like Gen V? You want to wait till it's over? Do like a whole thing or?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I mean,
Also, did you get my?
let me watch the next few episodes. I don't know if you watched it yet.
No. Lavender, stop it. Do you see the thing I sent you about Invincible coming back November 3rd?
Yeah,
Oh
sounds
my
good.
fucking god, I'm excited as fuck.
All right, man. All right, I've been on here what 3 hours 45 minutes. So I'm gonna finish up. So thank you everyone for being here. And I'll talk to you guys soon.